Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to the program. It's the Jeff Gerstmann Show for your Tuesday, June 25th, let's call it. And we're here. I'm your host for this week's installment of the program. My name is Jeff Gerstmann, and we're here to talk about everything that's been happening in the world of video games and beyond. And beyond, and the circles of filth that surround them. Is that the appropriate? As the video games are good. Everything around them, a little sketchy. I don't know, but here we are, a day away from our monthly scheduled release of MAME. I don't know what is in this month's MAME release, but I have not been following the GitHub commits for it this week, but I've been messing around with it. I'm getting ready to record another video about emulation. I'm going to be doing a series of those. There's one up right now on the Patreon, which you can find out more about at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. And I have been exploring new methods of cataloging and sorting and filing away your various files to make sure that they are named correctly and that they are good dumps. We got to get good dumps. Last time out, I talked a lot about MAME and talked a lot about how to kind of build a MAME set, because I think that's very foundational knowledge, and everything that I kind of talk about after that will kind of flow from that. But the author of Clear MAME Pro has a new piece of software, a couple new pieces of software that he's been working on for a long time that are not quite ready to replace that program, but are interesting functionality wise. And so I've been looking at those to see if it would be easier and smarter to kind of teach people how to use that than it would be to kind of get them onto the old Clear MAME bus. Anyway, I don't know. It's the answer is it's not quite ready yet for public consumption, but it's a interesting future ahead for cataloging a database and using DAT files and blah 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 blah. And so I'm excited about that. I don't know. This banana thing continues to dominate a lot of Steam charts. It feels like that the conversation is kind of fading into the background about banana, but there has been a handful of happenings around it that are interesting. If you're not familiar, banana is a free piece of software on Steam. It seems to be an idle game, like a clicker, but also it's not. Because it resets every time you launch it. Like, you can click the banana and a number will go up, but you don't go purchase upgrades. You don't go and do, and every time you launch it, the number resets to 0. And the crux of banana is that you don't actually have to click the banana, or at least like you don't have to click it a lot. What they do is every 3 hours and then every 18 hours, depending on which hopper you're looking for, they give you a banana, and it goes into your Steam inventory. And there are common bananas and there are rare bananas, and bananas get retired after a period of time, and new bananas get cycled in on a pretty regular basis. And so at a minimum, because of the way the Steam store works, you could try to sell those bananas on the Steam marketplace for upwards of 3 cents. But some of them sell for, and I've seen completed sales from the looks of the charts. Some of these things have sold on Steam for over $1,000. And so it's become this weird banana slot machine where if you end up with a rare banana, that might be something that is worth something. But the ones that seem to be worth the most money are no longer in the game. Some of them are like limited to 25 and like all sorts of stuff like that. But and so of course, like, you look at this and go like, it has the eyes and ears of a, it has the smell of a gigantic grift. And as people dug into it, they discovered that there was a person affiliated with the project who had apparently been involved in some kind of blockchain grift previously. And they kicked that person out of the project. They said, this person's no longer affiliated with it. We're getting that. We did not know. We're getting this person out of here. And at the same time, they have redrawn a lot of bananas. They had illegal bananas on the Steam marketplace because I guess the dog from the Dogecoin dog. It hurts me to even say Dogecoin out loud, you know? How far have we fallen? Anyway, that dog appeared on one of the bananas. They have redrawn that banana to be a more of a artist's rendering of said dog, and as a result, that banana has gone from 14 cents down to about 8. I don't know if it's a direct result of the redrawing of the bananas, but the volume's way down. Trading volume on the dog banana way down. And so I've joined their Discord. I'm just like looking at it. I'm just like staring at this thing because it is one of the most popular games on Steam. And I'm trying to figure out what this thing is. Ultimately, there's no guarantee that the creators of the game aren't able to grant themselves expensive bananas and sell them off, or that people aren't using it to launder money, or whatever it is. Whenever you look at anything on the Steam marketplace and it seems like something bad is happening, I feel like you can guarantee that somewhere someone is doing something bad with it. But the thing itself on its face is relatively harmless. You open up the app, like you don't even have to leave it running. And so they've made it very kind in that way, where it's not like, oh, I'm going to leave banana running 24/7 in case I get a rare banana. No, like you launch it and then launch it again in a few hours and the stuff shows up in your inventory. It's not even like so it's not even something where the thing has to be running. And so it's not like there's some hidden crypto miner in the background that has to be running as part of the app or whatever else. And it's a very fascinating thing to look at. That is kind of happening again. There's video games, and then there's the adjacent world around it. This is maybe a little bit more a world around it than games themselves. And it's interesting. I don't know. Like I don't have any like real complaints about it. You look at it and go like, this is like a dumb thing, and people are having fun with it and have created a community around it, and whatever. And also like now there's business involved. So the other thing that happened is now they're celebrating being in the thing has been running for about 2 months now. And so they have partnered with a peripheral with Razer, the peripheral manufacturer, maker of fine peripherals and bad software that runs them. Razer goods are fine. Razer Synapse, the software, less fine. And so like Razer has done a deal with them to give away Razer branded bananas, and also there's some giveaways for mice or something. Like they're doing some kind of giveaway in conjunction with banana, and that's the world we live in now. I don't know, it's just fascinating. I'm just looking at it and go like, all right, yeah, man, they're doing their thing, and I'm launching banana 2 or 3 times a day and going like, all right, here's another 3 cents. I guess like the trading volume is such that like I could get 3 cents for that's actual monies that I could be getting. So yeah, I don't know. I have been spending a good long time staring at the contraption to figure out where the scam is, or where just looking at it and going like, there's something happening here. It feels like there's something happening behind the scenes here, but also like, yeah, who is buying? Why are people buying the bananas? Do they think it'll be, is it an investment? Do they think it'll be worth more in the long run? And is it only people that are sitting on like insane Steam inventories, like Steam wallets, because they've been laundering money in Counter-Strike skins for the past 10 years? Or like, what is the pipeline here? You know? I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's a very weird thing that, like, when you first look at it, it goes like, this is incredibly sleazy. Like, there's something really bad happening here. I just can't put my finger on what. And as I've stared at it longer and longer, I'm not sure. I'm still not sure. But a lot of people are just kind of having fun with it, and I can't necessarily fault that. So, you know, whatever. It's banana. What will the other thing is, like, you can tell that, like, they just kind of started this thing and then went, oh shit, this became popular, because, like, I feel like every third time I launch it, there's a revised EULA. Like, at some point they went like, we should talk to a lawyer about this banana empire we're building and figure it out. Because, oh Jesus, this suddenly got big. And so, like, every time you launch it, there's like a slightly different EULA, or it asks you to agree to what I assume is a slightly different EULA. I'm not sitting there and before and aftering it, but just what an interesting, weird thing that is happening right under all of our noses, but also is very popular. Like, what is still like the number 4 game on Steam. Like, it's bigger than, you know, it has higher all-time numbers than a lot of games you think would be very high on that list, but or maybe aren't. And there you have it. Banana 2024's surprise of the year. I don't know. Why don't we get into the news? I got this. I found one of these finally. These have been around for a while, but I had trouble finding them, and I need to make sure. We've reached a point with the energy drinks here that I'm not always sure if I have ranked these before. No, I have not. I thought that was the case. It's Ghost's Strawbango Margarita. Strawbango is very fun to say. I am going to launch my Steam application where you click on a Strawbango and different Strawbangos drop. This one's got a panda on it. I assume that means strawberry mango, right? I mean, that seems like that would be the thing, right? That's what Strawbango must mean, right? Right? Yeah. It's been sitting in the fridge for a few days because I got it, and I was like, oh, I should drink one of these on the internet. Been a while. That's a very strong mango smell, not a very strong strawberry smell. Much more bango than straw. What if you clicked on an energy drink, and because then you could sit there and design funny energy drink cans all day long. I imagine there must be a billion banana knockoffs coming soon from people who think they can get in on it, and at some point Valve is either going to have to step in and do something, or Valve will very loudly not do anything because they're like, what's the problem? Steam is our libertarian oasis. Oh, that's pretty nice. This is nice. It's very mango, but also a little strawberry. And it says margarita, but I'm not really, I don't know. I don't know what that is supposed to, like, what is margarita supposed to represent in a non-alcoholic drink? Like, this doesn't taste like it has fake tequila in it. I mean, this tastes like, honestly, and I don't know if that's the message they're intending to send here, but you could probably mix this with a lot of tequila. Not really getting much of there's maybe a little lime. Let's check. Yeah, There's a hint of lime here. You could sugar the rim of this glass can and do something. I wonder if you were to pour this. I bet if you were to make this into a margarita, that would probably be all right. That would do something for you. What? Who can say? I'm not allowed to say. The government has forbidden me from saying. In fact, we want to bring up the list here. We've got 170 energy drinks on the list here. I hate Notion. This is normally we just run into this when we're ranking Nintendo games, but for some reason the copy and paste functionality just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. In fact, it does not work whatsoever. Yep. All right. Well, I'll just fucking read it to you, I guess. No, literally cannot get this in there. So I don't know if you're live in the chat, you can probably go to what is it? Energy.guard.bike. I think that will redirect you to the drink list. Let's see here. This is better than a Monster Rehab green tea, which is number 33. But it's definitely in this zone. It's better than a C4 frozen bombsicle. It is better than the G Fuel sour cherry and the G Fuel divine peach. It's not as good as Rockstar Recovery lemonade. Let's stare at this a little longer here. Let's look at more of the list. I don't want to rush this onto the list. Is it better or worse than the Ghost EDC Electric Limeade? I think it's better. It's better than the Rockstar Recovery Berry Aid at number 37. It's better than Gatorade Fast Twitch Glacier Freeze at number 31. It's better than the Lucky Fuck Red Rider Punch, which is certainly not bad. It's not as good as Rockstar Recovery Orange. It is more potent than Rockstar Recovery Orange, but it is not as good. I would take it over a sugar-free Red Bull, though, because sugar-free Red Bull is disgusting. And that's at number 27. So that means that... Was it also not letting me edit this list at all? What? Jesus. All right. Oh, you know what it is? You can't copy and paste when you have the search window open. And so if you're searching... Notion sucks, man. Strawbango Margarita is our new number 27. Congratulations. Join the 27 club with a ice cold can of Ghost Strawbango Margarita. Is that no? That I don't think that's their slogan. I don't think that's their. Oh, and now I have closed Notion, so now I can't even see the podcast news. We've screwed the whole thing up. We're starting over here, and now the news. Atari 50 is getting even more games. They announced this morning. The 50 refers to the 50th anniversary of Atari, not that it has 50 games in it. It launched with over 100 games in it. And then they added like another 12 or something in like a DLC pack. But they sent me this press release last night. They are adding about somewhere around another 40 games to the mix, and also they're going to add new video, which is cool. They're going to add new timelines with new material in it, which would be cool. Yeah, if they're just like throwing another 40 games in it, then it's kind of like, oh, that's fun, but I can emulate things in a lot of ways. It's, hey. So But they are going to add the wider world of Atari and something called the First Console War, which now that they own in television, I imagine that is going to be something that includes that material. They've got some new interviews lined up for that, as well as more ads and stuff. This also is going to come in conjunction with a physical edition of the game that will be coming to PlayStation 5 and Switch. And there'll be I guess maybe the Steelbook edition might only be coming to Switch. A Switch-sized Steelbook. I've never seen one. I find it in my head when I think about a Steelbook Switch-sized case, it seems like an abomination. I've seen some reporting saying that this add-on will be free, but the material that I was sent does not indicate one way or the other if this is something that will be free. The expanded Steelbook version will include all of this content, and they will sell it for $40. But I've seen, as people have turned this material into news articles, and I clicked through a few of those, some of them do say that it will be a free add-on, but it's not clear. I mean, unless they contacted them and said, hey, is this free? And got back a yes. But that is not indicated one way or the other here. The physical edition will come with some stuff, some little miniature arcade marquees, and like a replication of Alcorn's Syzygy business card, which is fun. But yeah, I don't know. That stuff will come as downloadable content for the existing version of the game, and I assume they are going to sell that for some amount of money. I don't. But again, this first batch of material did not indicate one way or the other if there was a cost or not. Just that it would be coming as DLC. And I feel like if it was not going to be, if they were not going to charge money for it, they would say it's coming as a free add-on or coming as a patch or something like that. But we shall see. Xbox owners are angry. That's it. No, this time they're angry about the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection because it is not coming to Xbox. If you remember this was something that was announced originally at the Nintendo Direct, and it will collect 7 different games featuring Marvel characters from Capcom, which is pretty much their fighting lineup, and the Punisher, which is a belt scroller. I talked a little bit about this and maybe this doesn't need to be here on the podcast because I did kind of talk about this specifically when we were streaming last week, but I wonder if this is a weird release anyway, right? It's coming to PC, Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation 4. There's not going to be a PlayStation 5 native version of the game, which they don't need one because they're emulating arcade games. The PlayStation 5 will run it just fine. They don't need to make it that way, but it's weird. And I have not seen any explanation deliberately saying why it's not coming to Xbox. This is the sort of thing that I kind of assume it either will come to Xbox. I can't think of any technical reason why it wouldn't. But I think there's always the possibility that they looked at this from a business perspective and said, like, hey, is there, what's the upside of bringing this to bringing this to Xbox, and that it may be a business reason. But yeah, there have been some people trying to explain it away as some sort of MT framework related thing. These are all solvable problems. If they wanted to bring this game to Xbox, they would be able to find a reason. But if there's a big technical problem that makes it cost more money, then at some point they have to look at it and go like, is this a platform where people care about fighting games? And that has always been the that's always been the thing in the back of my mind, and this is what I talked about. I think it was Wednesday on the Wednesday stream, but like it is that notion that Sony has done really good at well, you know, whether they had the exclusive on the previous Street Fighter back with Street Fighter 5, but also they have purchased Evo, and also Japanese developers tend to support the PlayStation more than the Xbox, and so you end up with a situation where all of those fighting games come to Sony consoles but don't always make it to Xbox. Then you've got the Xbox third-party hardware requirements and rules and regulations around making fight sticks and a lot of this other stuff that that is a contributing factor when it comes to all of this, because it leads to hardware manufacturers, to fight stick manufacturers not being able to support the Xbox. And then also the thing I have heard from major hardware manufacturers at multiple points over the years was no one buys this shit on Xbox. No one buys our fight sticks on Xbox. No one, the audience for this type of hardware they have a PlayStation, and increasingly they're playing on PC, but they do not buy Xbox fight sticks. And because of the way the rules exist, they can't make an officially licensed, I should say, fight stick that supports both Xbox and PlayStation because of the way all that stuff works. And so they don't. And so the Xbox kind of gets left out in the cold for some of those reasons. Some of which I feel are in their control because it's their own regulations around accessories that causes at least part of this problem. But also it's never been a priority for them, because what's the, you know, it's that, like, people play Samurai Showdown on the Xbox, right? and they play Killer Instinct. And now KI is on PC, and so that's one fewer platform you need to bring if you're already... It seems like if you wanted to run a fighting game tournament, you could just do it on PC because all that stuff is there. But that's expensive if you're trying to run 8 setups or 16 setups, or, you know, you're trying to run a big fighting game tournament. It's a lot easier to lug around a bunch of PlayStations than it is to lug around a bunch of PCs. And then they're like, oh, we've got to bring a Xbox. We've got to bring, you know, yes, Xbox is the preferred way to play that last Samurai Showdown game because it's, Chad is saying it has low latency and runs at 120 frames per second. So, like, that's kind of an interesting and weird exception. But generally speaking, the fighting game, and this is weird. This has been this way, I think, for kind of a while. You just didn't think about it as much, I think, in like the Street Fighter 4 days. Like I probably played most of my Street Fighter 4 on an Xbox 360. Without really thinking about it too much. But as time has gone on, my understanding is that, as these kind of opinions or as these market factors have kind of calcified a little bit, you then get to the point where, these people are like, well, we're making a brand new leverless controller. Like, oh, are you going to bring it to Xbox? Absolutely not. No one would buy it. No one there buys this stuff. So absolutely, of course not. You're like, oh, okay. And that's an opinion that seems to be mirrored around a lot of the officially licensed fight stick business, as far as I can tell. So this is an interesting one because it's kind of a nostalgic sort of thing. And these games are old and have a wider appeal in some weird way, but that's not going to move Microsoft's accessory policies. That's not going to change this kind of momentum, I guess, this or lack thereof, this miasma, this sludge that surrounds the idea of fighting games on the Xbox. And so with all of that in mind, I am not shocked or even surprised that this collection was not announced for Xbox. It's a little weird. That's the most I can say about it. But when I think about all of the factors that seem to be up against fighting games on the Xbox platform these days, that's not to say there's none. but that, you know, generally speaking, that seems to be a lot of the wisdom out there. And I would be really curious to see what the Street Fighter 6 platform split is these days. For sure. Like how well did that do everywhere? But I don't know. To me, this seems like Capcom going, oh yeah, we're going to put it on the platforms where people might buy this. And that's it. And honestly, I could see a world where, and they can't do this for every game, and they maybe shouldn't do it for this one. But I think you know when Microsoft sees this stuff, right? They see that that there is some outcry, some fervor around this particular game. They probably pick up the phone and call Capcom and be like, "Hey, what can we do to get this?" They probably at least start the conversation if they haven't had it already to say like, "What can we do to get this on Xbox?" And so that's why I think that, you know, this situation could result in them putting it out there eventually. And the game doesn't have a release date yet, so it's like, or no, I'm sorry, is this one October? No, I'm sorry, I don't think this has a date. Anyway, either way, it's far enough out that like you could see a situation where an Xbox version materializes, but my guess here, and it is just a guess, but my guess here is that Capcom looked at the market and said, "Nah, we're not gonna do that." For Xbox, and unless Microsoft comes calling and says, "Hey, what can we do to make this happen and get it like to be on Game Pass?" And then Capcom is like, "Oh, well, if you're willing to pay for us to do this work, then of course we'll do it." And like I said, Microsoft can't do this for every game in existence. Otherwise they would, to solve all of these sorts of weird, whether they're regional problems or whatever it is. But, you know, I wonder if this does lead to a situation where Microsoft just goes like, fuck, all right, how much is it going to cost us for you to A, make this game, and B, for us to have it launch on Game Pass when it does come? If it's not, you know, like if it's 90 days after, or, you know, if it's at some point after this. And I don't think that this collection matters enough for them to do that, personally. It's just not. It's a collection of 7 old arcade games and some additional material. That's cool. It's cool that they're making it. Like, you know, it's cool that there will be another version of MVC2 out there for the people that want to keep playing that for the rest of their lives. Good on them. And for the handful of people that want to look at X-Men versus Street Fighter for like 5 minutes, go, huh, and then never touch it again, well, that'll be cool too. I mean, let's be honest here. You know, like they'll put online into all of these games, but people are really only going to play 1 or maybe 2 of these on a somewhat serious basis. It's the same with the Street Fighter. You know, when they put that Street Fighter collection out on Switch, it was like, oh, this is awesome. No one's, I mean, it's like, I'm sitting there going, oh, it's great that I can play Champion Edition because that's my favorite one, or Turbo rather. But no one wants to play that one because they're all just playing Super Turbo. And so it's cool that you have this collection, and it's cool that it has all this online, but that's not really how it's going to pan out when the thing comes out. People are going to play MVC2, and then you might find occasional matches, unless you have friends. Unless you have friends that want to play those games with you, then you're like, cool, man, let's play Marvel superheroes just like we used to do back in the day, and then you can do it. And that's awesome. That's good. That's good. But the idea of any of these other games, just, you know, like having random players matchmaking at them at all hours of the night, like, no. But neat that they did it. Good that they did it. They should make another Marvel versus Capcom. Probably. They should probably just make another one of those. Like once Street Fighter kind of winds down a little bit, or, you know, they're kind of like in a lull between, not that, you know, they're going to keep making DLC. At this point, it feels like they're on a certain train here with Street Fighter where they're just like, we're going to put out DLC and then the next one's going to come out and that's that. But like, I don't know, like obviously like Disney is a pain in the ass because it's Disney, right? But I look at it this way. If Disney is still willing to work with Square after everything and all, after the way that relationship has been for Kingdom Hearts, if they're willing to go like, all right, fuck, let's figure out a way for this to happen. Let's figure out a way to make another Kingdom Hearts because it'll make money. We need to figure this out. Like if they're willing to fucking fix that fucking broken ass relationship over the years, then there's always going to be a path for a new Marvel fighting game at Capcom. There will always be a path. Will it be a low resistance path? Will it be a path worth walking down, or will it be pain and suffering the entire way? Will it be worth it monetarily? Because of the other Marvel properties that are out there in the marketplace and whatever else, will Disney force a bunch of costume choices and all this other stuff? Like, I think that Disney has been a little bit smarter about some of that stuff as of late. Or rather, there seems to be a bit of a maybe we can just make a great video game. Maybe. Happening there maybe than there was, a handful of years ago. Certainly the last time they got together to try to make a fighting game, but I don't, whatever. Yeah. I mean, let's unfuck the Tatsunoko relationship and do TVC2 instead. If you really want to make a game for fucking proper sickos, like, why aren't we doing that? I mean, if you really want to make it, why aren't we just making Capcom versus SNK 3? I mean, if we really want to just fucking break it down, then that's what we should be doing. Goddamn. Cool. They announced that thing. I don't know. Like it's people. I remember Capcom inviting us to go to Sunnyvale Golfland to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 when it was there kind of on test and it wasn't out widely. And we went it was like late morning, early afternoon, some random Wednesday or whatever, just during the week. And it was there in like full public, like people were playing it, and it ended up being one of the least fun times I have had at like a game demo and also at like an arcade, because we're there to play this one game, but they can't kick people off the game. And so we have to play against the people that are there to play the game that have been pumping money into it already for, a full week or two or more. And they've already gotten better at it than any of us ever will. And so it's like, here you go. And I'm like, well, that was fun. And like Capcom, the dude from Capcom's got like a pocket full of fucking quarters or tokens or whatever Golfland machines operated on. And so he's putting the credits in there. And it's just like, all right, this is fucking like, I'm learning jack fuck about your game here. Like this is a fucking terrible way to show this game. And like, I'm going to come back and write about it and be like, oh yeah, what are the systems in this game? I don't know, man. I think you can call all three dudes out at the same time, because that kept happening to me. You get launched up in the air and get bounced around for a while, and then you walk away from the machine. It's a great time. It's like straight up just one of the lasting memories of just like what a terrible demo. Because like I hadn't played it at all, and I had played I played a lot, like a decent amount of Children of the Atom, and I played a decent amount of Marvel superheroes and some of the games that came before it, MVC1 and just even X-Men versus Street Fighter and some of that other stuff. But I never played it against anyone that was any good, or anyone that was playing those games the way that they are intended to be played, meaning we were all at the same basic level of skill, which meant that we didn't really grasp the launcher air combo. Like we were playing those games like they were fucking Street Fighter. Like, it's like, here's Alpha 2, and then here's one of these fucking Marvel games next to it, and we're like mostly playing Alpha 2, and then occasionally playing one of those, but just playing it like it might as well be Alpha 2. and so, like I had never, and I'm still not, I am fucking bad at the I am bad at the versus games. I am bad at Capcom's versus games, with the possible exception of Capcom versus SNK, if you want to consider that part of that sub franchise. But as a result, you walk into people that are just like, no, this is how you air combo and fuck you. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, fuck me. You're right. Fuck me. Okay, great. What an awesome time. Yeah, it was that's my main memory of Marvel versus Capcom 2. Then it eventually came out, obviously the Dreamcast version came out, and I did play more of it, but never really got super into it. So I don't know. It's great that these are happening. I don't have any personal connection to MVC2. Like, my interest in those games kind of stops at Marvel superheroes. Like, that was kind of the last one that that is kind of the games on that list. That's the one I probably played the most of. If not, it's either that or Children of the Atom. Like, even before X-Men versus Street Fighter came out. Like, but anyway, great that they're making those. August will mark the return of Gamescom in Germany, in Cologne. We're starting to get more and more indications as to who is and is not going. If you remember, Nintendo said, I believe back in March or April, that they were not going to go to Gamescom. Sony has followed up. The PlayStation brand will skip Gamescom. That is according to videogameschronicle.com, who has a report from German industry publication Gameswirtschaft, which is, again, a lot of fun to say. And so, I don't know. This is, I guess, not surprising. Like, PlayStation hasn't been at Gamescom since 2019 or something like that. And they're kind of having a quiet year, I mean, they had their state of play, and it seemingly announced the majority of what they've got for the near term. And so, other than going there and saying, hey, here's Astrobot, which will be almost out by that point, or Conquered, which will be out in on the month of August. They probably don't have a ton of reasons to go to Gamescom at all. I wonder if they will be at. I wonder, does it even happen anymore? It seems like a fake thing, but Paris Games Week was a thing that Sony was kind of cornering the market on for a good long time, and being like, well, we're not going to Gamescom, but we'll be at Paris Games Week. And like, oh, ooh la la, literally, ooh la la, so fancy. So I don't know if that's happening. I don't know if they're going to go to that or what the deal is. But again, like they seem like they're having a relatively quiet year in terms of releases and such. So unless they've got some. Well, I don't know if they're going to announce a PlayStation 5 Pro this year. I suppose they need to fucking do it somewhere, right? But it won't be Gamescom. God, yeah, that's right. So Conquered releases kind of in conjunction with Gamescom, because Keeley's show is going to be August 20th, and then Conquered is out August 23rd. Concord. They should hold an event in Concord, California. They should be like, come explore the lovely world of Concord. Come to wonderful Concord. I would go to that. I've stayed in motels in Concord. Meanwhile, Microsoft is going to be there with what they're calling their biggest booth yet, according to Eurogamer. That's kind of all the news about it, though. They're just like, what do? They posted to Twitter. The Xbox team is headed back to Gamescom. Visit us at our biggest booth yet, August 21st through the 25th. And then a follow-up, they said, but you want to know about the games, huh? Here's just a few you can expect to see. Age of Mythology Retold, Avowed, Ara, History Untold, Diablo 4, A Vessel of Hatred, Diablo Immortal, The Elder Scrolls Online, Fallout 76, Towerborn, and World of Warcraft, The War Within. So Blizzard will be there. Towerborn. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that one. But yeah, I guess that's still coming, isn't it? And that's it for Gamescom. I don't know. There's not a... Well, I don't know. I mean, Microsoft had a really good show a couple weeks ago with their showcase, and they've got some things coming out this year. And also, I guess BlizzCon is not happening, so it would make sense for those Blizzard games to show up at Gamescom, and that will help fill out a booth, I'm sure. But if they're like, I mean, look, I don't want to be if you're saying, oh, but you want to know what games will be there, and your list is like the fucking WoW expansion, Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls Online, like, it's not a great list of, like, and I'm sure there'll be more there than just what they're showing, because they are saying here's just a few you can expect to see. But if their first batch of like games includes Elder Scrolls Online, Diablo Immortal, and Fallout 76, you're like, okay, all right, so go with God on that one. Have fun in Germany. I'm presumably, yeah, Call of Duty is there in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just to show it to the foreign press who maybe didn't get to see it just recently when they were showing it off to folks here. Yeah, I'm sure there's a much longer list of games, but that's not the most exciting first salvo to say, we're going to be at Gamescom, brother. Come out and see the WoW expansion, brother. Like, I'm cool, man. I'm cool. One day I would like to go to Gamescom. But not this year. Also in other Xbox news, Matt Booty appeared on the Strictly Business podcast, which I checked is not hosted by EPMD. Neither Eric nor Parrish are on there, but it is run by Variety, and Eurogamer has recapped that. And he kind of got into a little bit around some of the studio closures. Obviously, we don't really know I kind of threw out a bunch of speculation at the time, like, here are the handful of things that maybe they could be seeing as to why they might close down a Tango Gameworks and whatever else. But there is a quote from him here that I think does kind of at least kind of show their cards ever so slightly. He was asked about the closure of Tango Gameworks and whether they had tried to find another buyer for the studio, was the question that Variety asked, according to Eurogamer. Anyway, the quote here is, I won't get into the real sort of nitty-gritty details on, what went into the decision, mostly out of respect for the people there, just because, there was a lot of work that went into delivering Hi-Fi Rush, which was a great game and did well for us. I think the thing to be considered is that for us, it's as much as a forward-looking situation as it is looking back at one certain game. There are a lot of things that go into success for a game. What leadership do you have? What creative leadership do you have? Is the team the same team that shipped something successful previously? And we have to look at all those things together and then ask ourselves, are we set up for success going forward? And while there may have been factors and situations that previously led to success, They may not all still be in place as you look at what you're doing going forward. And that's, I think, one of the things I said when we were talking about the disconnect between shutting down the studio that made Hi-Fi Rush while simultaneously saying we need more games like Hi-Fi Rush. And that Game Pass, benefits from games on that size and scope of a game like a Hi-Fi Rush. And so it sounds like they took a look at, obviously Mikami had left, so that probably impacts things one way or the other. But I imagine it's not just a case of like, well, Shinji Mikami left and now we're shutting down the studio. It's probably at least a little bit more than that. They're probably looking at the pitch of like, oh, what do you want to make next? Can you make it? What's the budget? Who's here? Or is it the people that succeeded? Because it's not, Mikami was not, as I understand it, a massive part of Hi-Fi Rush. Maybe he was there at the initial ideation of it and all that stuff, but it was, he was not necessarily running that game. I mean, he was not running that game. But it may have been a case of like, oh, other people have left the studio, or hey, do we think that this pitch that they're putting in is going to result in success? And they took a look at all of the factors and said no, and ended up shutting the studio down. I think that makes sense. I think you do have to look at the team in place and go like, okay, is this team able to execute on this vision that they have? And if not, what are we going to have to do to get it there? Are we going to have to hire up? Are we going to have to, so, even if you had Mikami and a skeleton crew or something and you felt really good about where Shinji Mikami was at or whatever, you'd still have to look at it and go like, oh, well, he's going to need to hire X number of people to get this game done and do that. I mean, I'm abstracting. Like, it doesn't matter that it's Mikami. It'd take any studio in the world. You have to believe that, like, okay, like if we give this studio this amount of money, they'll come back with this level of game in this time frame. And it may have been that they looked at it and said like, oh, well, there's also a big ask for more headcount here because they want to scale it up and make something bigger. And we don't think the market's going to support that. Or, I'm back to speculating here, but I do think that his quote kind of fills in the gap a little bit. For people who maybe were getting tripped up and getting confused by the idea of literally Matt Booty getting in front of the troops internally and saying, we need more games like Hi-Fi Rush. I think, is a quote not unlike that. And someone in chat's asking, why did they buy them? To only buy Shinji? Shit reasoning. No, they bought Bethesda. They got Tango Gameworks with the purchase of Bethesda. Like, they bought Bethesda. They bought ZeniMax. They bought the whole thing. They want Elder Scrolls and Starfield and Fallout and all of that other stuff. They want Doom and they want Quake and they want all of these big IPs, and Tango Gameworks is just something they kind of get in the middle of that and they go, oh, that's cool too. As someone who has been the division that was the, oh, that's cool too division in a sale, where new executives pretend to care about you for a brief period of time and they wear your hoodie in meetings to show that they're down, which is fucking embarrassing. Then it's very easy to look at this and see exactly how this happens because I have been part of something that resembles that. I have been the person saying, you need to let me hire more people because no one else is here. I don't know if you noticed. Anyway, so I look at the Tango Gameworks situation and just go like, yeah, I mean, they only have so much money to spend and they have to really figure out what the fuck is, what the go forward plan is. And I think it makes sense for them to shut it down if they don't necessarily believe in like, oh, well, we don't think we're going to be able to get a project in this, or like it's going to take too much work and there's too many risk factors. We already have a dozen different risk factors at every other studio we have open right now. Let's try not to create more problems. There's a number of different, I'm kind of speculating here, but there's just a lot of different moving parts there that it's easy to see why they might not add up to greenlighting that next project and moving forward. It's not just as simple as the Hi-Fi Rush people wanted to make another one. It's never quite as simple as that, I would say. Anyway, I found that interesting. He kind of, because the question was about like selling the studio, they did kind of also get into some of the other things that have happened with some of their owned studios. Because he gave examples of Toys for Bob, where Toys for Bob just recently went independent. Toys for Bob kind of came in. Similarly, Toys for Bob is kind of like an off to the side studio in the Activision grand scheme of things. They're making kind of the smaller projects. They're making, they're not the reason you're buying Activision, but you're like, oh yeah, Toys for Bob. I mean, that's the Star Control people in a weird way, right? I mean, that's kind of, yeah. I mean, that's the Skylanders folks. Great. They made Crash Bandicoot. They've more recently, they have had success on somewhat smaller projects within the Activision framework. But at the end of the day, they were able to leave and go independent as around this stuff. Microsoft was able to go like, no, go with God, go do your own thing, become independent. I don't know if money changed hands on that thing or if they just let him go. But they probably would have been laid off in the middle of all of this stuff because they were also like, weren't they just one of 1,000 other Call of Duty support studios on top of also being like, I don't know, maybe we'll make Spyro, maybe we'll make this. And now they are independent, but they are making a game that is going to be published by Microsoft that people seem to think could be a Crash Bandicoot game. And so like still working with a similar list of IP and still, but able to do it out on their own instead of just getting all laid off. That gets them off Microsoft's books and gives them a little bit more freedom as to what they do next. And ideally that works out for them. That sounds like a tough. That sounds tough, but like they're in control of their own destiny, and that's pretty awesome too. And then he mentions Twisted Pixel, which was another weird situation. The quote here is, I think back to a studio called Twisted Pixel in Texas that we acquired. And then for sort of a change in goals, it wasn't a perfect match anymore, but that studio today is still thriving. We wanted to set them up for success. So we absolutely look at what the possible business options are to keep a studio open or to keep, perhaps have it change hands. And it's just one of the things, of course, that we look at across the board. Sometimes those things come together and sometimes they don't. Because yeah, Twisted Pixel went independent again. What, they had Loco Cycle, and then was Loco Cycle the last Twisted Pixel game under Microsoft? Because then they went independent and now they are owned. Then they got into VR development and now they are owned by Facebook. They made that Herman's Heart, someone's Heart. I forget the name of the game. They made that VR game and kind of went all in on VR. No Gunstringer. Unfortunately, I find myself a lot less interested in the Twisted Pixel output post Gunstringer is where it topped out. Comic Jumper was good. Like, yeah, there was like, they were making some good fun shit for a good long time, and the Wavy Tube Man Chronicles is like the weird love letter to Mad Dog McCree that no one needed or asked for or deserved, but it's beautiful that we got it. It's beautiful that we got that game. And so Twisted Pixel gets a pass forever as a result of the Wavy Tube Man Chronicles, but I don't think they've hit those highs in VR ever since. Loco Cycle was a neat idea that I did not think made for a very fun video game, for whatever that's worth. But and for whatever this is worth, Ubisoft claims on the official Beyond Good and Evil Twitter account, they have written, yes, Beyond Good and Evil 2 is still in development, And we cannot wait for you to discover more about Jade's past in the 20th anniversary edition. That's right, that 20th anniversary edition of Beyond Good and Evil has finally been announced. It is going to be coming out as a limited run physical good, as a limited run games, I believe they're doing some kind of package for it. The game will apparently include some kind of link to the sequel. It will have some kind of new content in there that will link it to whatever the fuck Beyond Good and Evil is. I imagine that means when you beat the game, you'll get an opportunity to buy an NFT or something, right? What? Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition will be coming out today. And yeah, maybe you finish a mission and then Joseph Gordon-Levitt pops up in a video and says, "You gotta help me!" Like he's just him surrounded by fire. And I don't know how to make a video game. The Rayman guy left. What are we doing? Ah! And then like it's just, there's a hidden URL in there and you scan the QR code and then it allows you to upload assets off your hard drive and says, "Do you own these?" And you just wink at your camera and say, "Yes, I do." And it goes, "Great, they're all in the game now. Thank you for your help. Please send more art." It is no longer the 20th anniversary of Beyond Good and Evil in 2024 here. But better late than never, I guess. I don't know. Did this thing come? It's is this something that is going to launch on Steam? They're just saying it's out on all platforms June 25th is the way the way the writing was, but that tweet was then deleted because they were waiting for Limited Run Games to run their live stream to talk about the physical version or whatever the hell else. Wait a minute, what? Okay. Ready Set Victory in the chat is saying, FYI, the new release includes BattleEye DRM in Steam. What? For all the fucking hot competitive multiplayer needs I have in Beyond Good and Evil? Does it have online multiplayer? Is that the narrative link? Is there a multiplayer version of the game stashed in there? It is $20. And yes, it is in fact available now. It's funny. It says Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition at the top of the page. And then down lower, it just says, buy Beyond Good and Evil Remastered. Embark on this epic adventure in up to 4K 60 with improved graphics and audio, a new speedrun mode, updated achievements, and an exclusive anniversary gallery. Incorporates third-party DRM, BattleEye. What? And also, you have to have to link your Ubisoft account to Steam for it, I guess, too. Beyond Good and Evil was a cool game, and it never deserved any of this. Like, look, man, I want to see Beyond Good and Evil 2 as much as the next person, if not more so, because of the story, right? Because of, like, what have you been doing all this time? How many video games have you thrown away in this quest for development? I wonder how. I mean, is Ubisoft able to take tax write-offs every time development starts over? Like, how does that work? Because, like, with all the years and all the people that have probably worked on some piece of a game that they thought was going to be Beyond Good and Evil 2 over the years, there's no financial, like, there's no P&L for this that you look at and go, we're coming out on top, man. No, this is going to make all that money back. Trust me. Source, trust me, bro. We're going to make it. And so I don't, yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, yes, Race Victor says they probably get subsidies for maintaining a certain level of employment. That's usually how it works in Quebec. Yeah, it could be definitely like government tax write-offs for keeping people employed or whatever it is. I say it every time we talk about it. I like Beyond Good and Evil 2 just fine. It's like a solid like in a world where we didn't get a lot of games that were like The Legend of Zelda, The Ocarina of Time, Beyond Good and Evil was a fun breath of fresh air in that it was kind of like Ocarina of Time, but also had a fun photo mode and a cool hovercraft or whatever. Like, it's a good game. I don't have anything necessarily bad to say about it, but it has taken on this mythological property over the years that it does not deserve, and that the game is not good enough to sustain. And I don't know what the hell you do with a sequel to. I mean, the sequel doesn't even have, it feels like when they were showing the sequel, like the links to the original game felt like light to nil. But it's a cool, I don't know, whatever. It was a cool game. It's cool that it's back out there and that they've remastered it, and I will take a look at it. Just like when I took a look at it when they put it out on 360, I remember playing it and going like, well, this is nice. I don't want to play this game again, but that's cool. That's cool that they did this. Because people got weird about this game. Like, I don't know, people got weird about this game. And it was always fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. But like, it just felt like a very weird, like, as time wore on, the reception to it became more weirdly positive, and it's like, yeah, no, this game is fine. It's got some issues. Like, it's not. I don't know. Data miners, according to IGN, appear to have perhaps found the next batch of Mortal Kombat 1 characters for a second season of DLC. Interloco is the responsible party here, digging through the files, and the 6 characters that Interloco is reporting are this can't be right. They can't get away with this. This I will say the first 3, certainly the first 2, sound like criminal if they are going to sell these characters as characters, considering it's Cyrax, Sector, Noob Saibot. Cyrax and Sector are already in the game as cameo characters, so they could have new looks. They could be different versions of the characters, like all that sort of stuff, because of the weird timeline stuff. And then 3 guest characters: Ghostface, Conan the Barbarian, and a T-1000. Ghostface, not the Ghostface you're thinking of. Ghostface is apparently the name of the bad guy from the Scream movies. Conan the Barbarian, sure. And T-1000, I feel like, didn't they do Terminator stuff already? I guess, hey, they're doing a weird universe time travel, like multiverse thing. The Terminator's a time traveler. There's some. Oh, I guess T-1000 is the Robert Patrick one, right? Yeah, that's the Terminator 2 cop bad guy, not Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay. He's made of liquid metal. Will he play like a fucking Glacius or whatever? Will he just... I hope so. Will he play like a Clay Fighter character? I don't love their choices for whatever. I don't love guest characters, period, but I don't really like their choices for guest characters all that much, other than the spectacle of seeing them for the first time and seeing their fatalities or whatever, when RoboCop made an appearance and all that, you're like, oh, cool. I would like to watch this exactly once, and I would like to play as RoboCop precisely twice, and then I'm good. And, 'cause, 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 ' so I don't know, Cyrax, Sector, and Noob Saibot. Obviously we'll have to see what versions of these characters, because these characters have existed so many different ways. Do we get human versions of Cyrax or Sector as a part of this? Like, what's the actual, what place are they in the storyline or whatever? Because it's not Robot Smoke, so I'd have to go back and play it again to remember exactly where the Lin Kuei automation project is in this timeline and all this other stuff. They are going to do, IGN kind of in recapping all of this does say, hey, also remember they did say they would do story DLC. And a big surprise after that, which I don't know. All right, that's cool. I don't know what a big surprise. So, so presumably they do story DLC in the same style. Let's assume, we don't know, but that's probably in the same scope as the Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath DLC was, which was cool, which was really cool. So I would happily play some more story DLC. I don't know what a big surprise would entail in the context of an update to this game if they're adding new modes. Fuck it, they're gonna put 20 DC characters in it and say, oh, by the way, this is also Injustice 3 now. No, I don't know. I don't know. I keep that game installed. I have not gone back to it much. Same with Street Fighter 6, honestly. Like, that's just kind of the sad state of affairs when it comes to where I'm at with fighting games, is I play them a lot when they first come out, and then I fall off because other games come out, and then I'm never able to get back. I'm never able to play enough to feel like I'm okay at it ever again. Like, the minute I take my eye off the ball and focus on another video game, all my skill, what little of it there is, just fucking tanks. And so I just kind of stop. Notable live streamer. Is that the noted piece of shit? I don't really know what the back in 2020, live streaming buffoon Dr. Disrespect, you may know him as Guy Beam, there's an H in there somewhere, was not that far into, I guess, what was a 2-year deal of an exclusive streaming arrangement with Twitch when the deal suddenly got killed. And he was kind of sent packing, and ended up, I believe was he stream on Kick now? It seems like he would. And I think he ended up on YouTube. But basically got banned off Twitch for a second time, because if you remember, he also did a live stream where he went into a bathroom at E3 2019 and live streamed himself going into the bathroom, where you could see minors using a bathroom. E3 revoked his badge, and basically that was that for him there. Twitch also banned him. I remember at the time trying to have conversations with people at Twitch about that situation, and all of it being very like, we don't know. A lot of this stuff happened at a level higher than and we don't know how long the ban is, if the ban is permanent, if the ban is this, if the ban is that. And eventually they worked something out where he was going to return to the platform, and then they signed this deal. There was a while there where Twitch was signing exclusive arrangements because other streamers were going elsewhere, and there was fear that there was going to be more competition in the live streaming space than there was, and that there still is, I suppose. And so it was very strange at the time for someone that they had picked to be an exclusive Twitch personality to suddenly have that deal canceled and removed from the platform and blah, blah, blah. For his part, he tries to say, I don't know what happened, and we're going to sue him, and we're going to do this and that. And then eventually whatever legal business they had between them was resolved. The story was that he got paid out the terms of the contract, and Twitch was just happy to have him be someone else's problem. Was kind of the way that sounded a lot to me back then. That was another situation where like trying to ask like, what the fuck happened here? Like, what is going on? Like, you signed this. I mean, I get why, you know, you might not want to be in business with this guy. I get why this guy might be volatile in a way that leads to a situation like this. But what happened? And obviously no one would say. And I'm sure as part of whatever arrangement that got him paid, there was probably something in the middle of all that was like, all right, we're not going to talk about this issue. We've got non-disparagement. We've got whatever's. And so this is just you just go away. You just get off of our thing. And so, yeah, so we ended up on YouTube. Over the weekend, everything kind of blew up for him as a result of that thing that happened back at Twitch. Someone who was with Twitch and was no longer with Twitch just kind of got on Twitter and said, without mentioning Dr. Disrespect's name, just said, hey, this guy was sexting was the word I believe we used in the tweet, minors on Twitch, was using Twitch's whisper like messaging platform to send some kind of sexually related content to minors, and that they had intended to that he was intending to meet up with them at TwitchCon. That's what happened. Didn't mention the guy's name, but everyone kind of quickly assumed that, well, this guy has to be talking about Dr. Disrespect. And sure enough, like even without being mentioned in the thing, Dr. Disrespect replied to that tweet and said, no wrongdoing. Like, it's the worst. It is. If you thought what Drake had to say, Drake the rapper had to say about being accused of being a pedophile was a not good enough dismissal of that charge, let me introduce you to what Dr. Disrespect has said about it. Let's see here. So the initial person who said this is a person named Cody Connors, and then another reporter in the esports space named Jake Lucky responded to this and said, a former Twitch employee has come forward and stated the alleged reason for Dr. Disrespect's permanent Twitch ban being for sexting a minor in the previous Twitch Whispers product. Okay, so Dr. Disrespect was named there. Okay, so he didn't just respond to something that didn't name him. So I take that back. But he responded, said, Jake, seriously, I get it. It's a hot topic, but this has been settled. No wrongdoing was acknowledged, and they paid out the whole contract. Period. End. Like, no wrongdoing was acknowledged is not you saying I didn't do that. Like, fucking. Just like, don't say anything. Like, just don't say anything. Call a lawyer and be like, call your lawyer. Surely you have a lawyer. And go, hey, the thing that we were worried might happen someday happened. And so now he's posting a multiple. Okay, he just posted a minute ago. So breaking. Oh, this is like a big long statement. Jesus Christ. Fucking Twitter, man. They really suck. They shouldn't have never have let people post this many characters in one message on Twitter. Oh, okay. So let's try to keep this in chronological order before reading what he's saying here, because he is admitting to certain pieces of it, I suppose. So on the back of this, so in his kind of post Twitch career, which this guy, like, I'm sure he was quietly making a lot of money and had viewers and whatever else. I just, like, this dude so disappeared from everyone's radar after this that unless you were there watching him or whatever, like, that dude just fucking vanished. Like, you did not hear about him. It was just like, oh, well, yeah, I remember that guy. What's he doing? It's like, oh, I don't know. He's quietly making a lot of money on YouTube, I guess, now. And, like, whatever portion of his audience went over there or whatever. He got involved with a video game. He was listed as the co-founder of a studio along with Robert Bowling, who you may remember was at Infinity Ward back in the Modern Warfare 2 era. He was one of the guys in that one-shot center mass fucking shit-talking community manager thing. And so Robert Bowling has been up to a number of things over the years. And anyway, they started a studio and Dr. Disrespect was a part of that. He was listed as a co-founder. It was some kind of NFT thing. I know they were selling NFTs to be like, you can get in the game now if you want to buy this fucking NFT or whatever. It was like, ugh. And I was like, well, that's a match made in heaven right there. But they attracted talent from, you know, like people that were formerly at 343 working on Halo. Like, you know, there's to hear the studio tell it, called the Midnight Society. There's about 55 people there now. Robert Bowling was apparently on a plane when all of this broke. And when the plane landed, he looked at all this and said, I've got to figure out what the fuck is going on. We will look into it. And not too long after that, they parted ways with him. They also posted to Twitter, on Friday evening, we became aware of an allegation against one of our co-founders, Guy Beam, aka Dr. Disrespect. We assumed his innocence and began speaking with parties involved, and in order to maintain our principles and standards as a studio and individuals, we needed to act. For this reason, we are terminating our relationship with Guy Beam immediately. While these facts are difficult to hear and even more difficult to accept, it is our duty to act with dignity on behalf of all individuals involved, especially the 55 developers and families we have employed along with our community of players. That, I think, escalates things, right? Because it's very easy to look at like a couple of people, ex-Twitch people, you know, talking shit on Twitter and being like, oh, here's what happened. I think that's something that you could easily kind of go like, well, they're just, they wouldn't, you know, and so they're not, the thing that people are like the responses to this tweet from people with paid Twitter accounts, if that tells you anything, are people looking for proof and looking for all of this sort of stuff. You're not going to get that here. This is probably something that, like, as they looked into it, they saw enough, and it's not something that they can necessarily present publicly without causing a fucking fuck ton of lawsuits and other things on top of themselves. And so all they can really do is look into this situation, see enough that they go, okay, because they're not going to be able to force him out without something. But they did, and they did it fast, which means that they investigated, found enough that's more than just what you're seeing here on Twitter, and terminated the relationship. That's how I take that to read. I take this as like pretty damning material, because remember, the entire premise of this, the entire appeal of this game seemingly, and the entire marketing campaign, whatever it is, everything about this was based on them having a relationship with this guy who is a popular stream guy. And now they're saying we're no longer, so, you know, like, what does this game have now? Like, what do they have left? You know? And so for them to take this step, which I think probably does end up resulting in maybe the end of their game before too long, because who knows, right? I mean, maybe we'll bring it to the public eye and it'll be a whole different thing and whatever. But like, the only interest people had in this game was because of this dude, and the only people that as far as I can tell, the only people playing this game or buying the NFTs to get access to the game were people that liked that guy. And they're like, we want to play as him in this vertical extraction shooter, I think is what I tried to read up on it yesterday. I was just like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. So I think for them to take this step for their in development game that, you know, if you signed up for it, you got access to some Star Citizen-esque chunk of the game. For them to take this step that they know will have negative material impact on their business, to me kind of says what needs to be said, right? Because if they were going to put the existence of their game and the existence of their studio over their principles or whatever, they would have not done this. They would have tried to ride out the storm. They would have tried to, you know, just get in the scumbag bus along with the guy and be like, we're all riding to the bottom. Let's see what happens. But instead they, you know, immediately severed that relationship. That says to me that they found enough that they were like, we are not doing this. We're done. And that's powerful, because I think that again is going to lead them into some very interesting territory for like the future of their game. What does it mean? Who's their audience? What are they, you know, like all of that stuff. And so now he's on Twitter spinning this as a joint decision, which I don't. What the Midnight Society said did not make it sound that way, but it says a lot of people have been. Oh, let's see. This is a really long message. I don't want to just read the whole thing, but a lot of people have been left in the dark about what happened yesterday with Midnight Society and we made the painful decision collectively to have me step down. Our team is full of incredibly talented and good people that have high career ambitions and families that I'd never want to jeopardize the culture we have carefully crafted. Everyone's been wanting to know why I was banned from Twitch, but for reasons outside of my control, I was not allowed to say anything for the last several years. Now that 2 former Twitch employees have publicly disclosed the accusations, I can now tell you my side of the story. Were there Twitch whisper messages with an individual minor back in 2017? The answer is yes. So that's the other thing, is the thing happened in 2020, but it sounds like that this was something that was from a previous time that they had finally figured out, or, you know, so it's like this weird convoluted thing anyway. The answer is yes. Were there real intentions behind these messages? The answer is absolutely not. There were casual, mutual conversations that sometimes leaned too much in the direction of being inappropriate, but nothing more. Nothing illegal happened. No pictures were shared. No crimes were committed. I never even met the individual. I went through a lengthy arbitration regarding a civil dispute with Twitch, and that case was resolved by a settlement. Let me be clear, it was not a criminal case against me, and no criminal cases have ever been brought against me. Again, these are not things that make you sound like a fucking good dude. Like, you don't read this and go like, oh, whew. Thankfully the doctor is on the up and up. Now, from a moral standpoint, I'll absolutely take responsibility. I never should have entertained these conversations to begin with. That's on me. That's on me as an adult, a husband, and a father. It never should have happened. I get it. I'm not perfect, and I'll fucking own my shit. This was stupid. Now, with all this said, don't get it fucking mistaken. I've seen all the remarks and labels being thrown around so loosely. Social media is a destruction zone. I'm no fucking predator or pedophile. Are you kidding me? Anyone that truly knows me fucking knows where I stand on those things with those types of people. Fuck that. There's a different level of disgust that I fucking hate even hearing about. Don't be labeling me as the worst of the worst with your exaggerations. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. What, dude? But I think I've said what I need to say regarding the ban itself. That's it. That's why Twitch made the decision in 2020. To my team, community, industry friends that have supported me, I apologize. I wish I could have said all this sooner. You guys have always showed me and my family love and support through all these years, blah, blah, blah. But trust me when I say this, to all my haters that live and breathe social media with zero real life experience, I don't give a fuck about you. Finally, if you're uncomfortable with this entire statement and think I'm a piece of shit, that's fine, but I'm not fucking going anywhere. I'm not the same guy that made this mistake all those years ago. I'm taking an extended vacation with my family, as mentioned on stream, and I'm coming back with a heavy weight off my shoulders. They want me to disappear. Yeah, fucking right. Dude. You didn't need to say like whatever. Someone in chat says how much of his money is his wife going to get. So I don't want to fucking, I don't care about YouTuber fucking drama at the end of the day. This is something that obviously, because it impacts a game studio and like all this other stuff, and because I was around a bunch of Twitch people, not a bunch. Anyway, around the E3 bathroom incident, we encountered a whole lot of Twitch people and had a lot of conversations with them then about that stuff. And you know, I think we talked about that stuff back then a little bit. And so it's becoming this kind of like hot topic, but like whatever. Anyway, point being, I don't want to become some YouTuber drama fucking guy, but like you talk about his wife and all this stuff. Like there have been previous, like he's admitted to cheating on his wife before and other stuff like that. Like there's been infidelity there on top of it, which is disrespectful, I will say. But like, who knows? Does this end that relationship? I don't know. One would assume that you would tell your wife what happened. That you wouldn't be like, sorry, honey, I can't tell you. It's illegal. It's a legal thing. I can't come clean about it. We agreed to not tell anybody. So it's like, so I don't, you know, that's that, I guess. I imagine, you know, this is the sort of thing that probably costs him whatever. I assume he, you know, in addition to the video game thing, he probably, okay, yeah, no, I'm refreshing feeds here. Accessory maker Turtle Beach has ended their partnership with The Good Doctor. That was a deal they announced last year, according to Video Games Chronicle. But Turtle Beach confirmed to VGC on Tuesday that it had parted ways shortly after it was alleged that the streamer was previously dropped by Twitch after being caught sexting a minor. Can we not use the term sexting in like, can we just try? We don't need to be like the fucking Wall Street Journal, but like, can we try the English language? You know, I at some point you think like, why would you get into business with this guy in the first place with some of the stuff that but like, this is a lesson maybe, but no one ever really learns it. And when they do learn it, they don't learn it for long. You know, Activision ran into that whole thing where they put some streamers into Call of Duty this year and then had to pull, was that last year or this year? And then had to pull the skins because the streamers turned out to be pieces of shit. Whoops. Like, you're doing all these brand deals. Like, why would you do that? Why would you open yourself up? Why would you hang such a percentage of your livelihood or business or whatever, especially in the case of this game studio where they're just like, where clearly that was probably their idea of like, this is how we're going to break through. We're just going to be this community first. And they were trying to spin it, I think, as like, you know, community developed because you're going to work with us and to help make it. And we're all fans of the Doctor, you know, whatever it is. And like, why would you get into bed with the guy in the first place? Knowing that like, or you know, like the thing about, so I guess the thing about this stuff with the, you know, contacting a minor and and whatever else. And so this is been kind of the story running alongside this story for the past few days, is this idea of like who knew what and when and why wasn't it reported? Did it get reported to authorities and whatever else? Did Twitch report this to the cops? And you're like, well, like we don't really know what happened here. We don't know what the language of Twitch's contract with the guy said in terms of a morals clause or whatever else. But like at the end of the day, and Aftermath has a good article on this if you want to know why journalism is the way it is. It is this idea of just like, you can hear a lot of things. I hear a lot of things about, hey, this game's coming to this is doing here. Hey, this is what they're working on. But it's single source. It's second or third hand. It's not the sort of thing you base a story around. And so if you hear this, you then have to go, okay. And so this is a story that like people have probably been hammering on for a long time. And maybe they gave up, maybe they didn't, or they kept it in their back pocket. Like one of these days, I've got all this stuff, but I don't have enough to run a story about exactly what happened with Dr. Disrespect. So like there were people who said, oh yeah, that was kind of the running theory, is that something like this happened, or that there was something with a minor, or I had heard this from this person, but could never get anyone to verify it. I could never get anyone to go on the record. I could never tie it to a firsthand source or whatever else. And so like, what if it's not true and you run it, because you just heard something from some dude who's third hand and you're like, that sounds like it's potentially possible, but unless you can get someone to talk about it, you can't have the story. And you don't want to open the person up to getting abused again, or whatever else. Like, so there are so many moving parts in stories like this, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be about this hot of a topic, right? But you do have to be fucking rock solid sure about this sort of stuff before you put someone's name in the paper. I mean, not be talking about newspapers as much these days, but like, before you come out and say, here is the exact thing that happened, you have to make damn sure that your story is tight, because they will try to sue your publication. They will try to, there have been people in this business that have done fucking heinous shit. And the only thing that kept their fucking story from running is because they had close ties to good lawyers. And that scares people off. It's fucking gross. But these are the sorts of situations that leads to people's hands being tied, is because they're in search of the proper full-on truth. And you can't just fucking, like, I heard some shit last week that would fucking blow you, about nothing related to anything gross, but just some video game stuff that would blow your goddamn mind. But I don't have a second source on it. I don't have a good fucking I don't have a good paper trail on any of it or anything. And so that's that. And since I'm not a big news guy, it's not something I'm like dramatically pursuing. And when you get into these things where you are like dealing with potentially criminal behavior, you have to fucking be right. And you can't stake your reputation, the entire reputation of your publication. You will get sued out of existence. And in some cases, you have a place like Gawker that will fucking have a thing dead to rights and will still get sued out of existence. And so if you've got lawyers at your publication that are too afraid to get sued, that can kill your story too. But at the end of the day, this is the sort of thing. So you have people that are saying like, oh, I heard something like this happen. And people are like, well, why didn't you fucking do something about it? It's like, well, because I heard it fucking third hand from a guy who was drunk at a fucking Twitch thing, who maybe worked there for a while or was dating someone who worked there, and like, I had never heard this stuff specifically. It was more just the whispers of just like, yeah, he did some shit. But there were people who were closer to it that say that they had heard a little bits and pieces about it and whatever else. And so, you can't just run an article saying, I heard this dude's a creep. You can say some shit on Twitter. Much lower standard there, I suppose. But, that could still open you up to legal action, I suppose. It's a fucking, yeah. So I don't know. Like it's frustrating, right? To have like this stuff happen all these years later, and you go like, well, why didn't this happen in that time frame? And there are a billion reasons why things like that don't happen in the time frame, and every single situation is going to be different. But again, if you're a reporter, you are held to standards, and if you can't get information that meets those standards, you don't run the story. This is when I was talking about all the, again, not to, this stuff is not nearly as fucked up, or not fucked up at all. But it's like when we had the story that Acclaim was going to be publishing or distributing Sega's games on PlayStation 2. When people that I worked with had that information and they had a story written and they wanted to run it, and then the person who was running news at the time stopped and said, you need to tell me how you got this information and why it's true and what your sources are. Like, you need to at least be able to tell me this stuff. And they would not. They wouldn't even internally say, here's who our sources were. You eventually put two and two together and you're like, oh, this person was dating someone who was in PR at Acclaim, and so maybe that's why they looked over someone's shoulder and heard this information and blah blah blah. And you put it together like that and you're like, that's a really fucking shitty source for a story. That's a really fucking bad source for a story. And that fight led to people leaving or whatever. But you try to have standards. You try to report the truth. And the truth isn't like, especially like some guy popping off on Twitter and being, that's why it happened. And you're like, that's why what happened? With who? What are we even talking about? Like, the thing that started all this, the guy didn't even mention the dude's name in it. It took a little bit more for people to finally connect all the dots. And The Verge has a story where they went and talked to people, and they went and got sources now, and they ran some stories that has, now that kind of the door's been opened a little bit, like there's, people that are willing to talk a little bit more about it and whatever else. And, yeah, so I don't know. It's that end of it and the reporting end of it is what it is, because you have to be right. You can't just run a bunch of bullshit. Because yes, exactly, Pat. Yes, the person who wrote about it they weren't even a firsthand source. They weren't there in the room when it happened. Because the number of people that were privy to this, my understanding, the number of people who actually knew originally the true nature of what this ban was about was an incredibly small number, and that the people in the department responsible for banning people, my understanding is that the vast majority of them had no idea for a good long time. And over the years, people talk and people go, oh no, it was for this, whatever, like all these years later, like that stuff's going to be a little looser than it was at the time. But at the time, the information was kept very tight because there was a lawsuit in the middle of it, and all of that other stuff. So whatever, they probably settled. He got his money to go away, and as a result, none of the details of it got out, and until now. And I think that's a gross situation. I don't what he's saying on Twitter now, and the message he's like frantically editing as we sit here and record this. I think is not a very good, not a very good message. Okay, he's deleted the one that was like, he posted it twice and they were slightly different, and now at least one of those is gone, and now the tone, the idea that he's writing this very like defiant, let's cut the bullshit, there's no filter with me, and then in the middle of it being like, did I message a minor? Yes, I did. Yes. Did I do anything illegal? Absolutely not. And you're like, okay, that's not, like, this is still fucking gross, dude. Like, I don't like writing. Are you writing this thinking like, well, all right, now that's done. Now I can go on vacation with my family and everything's going to be fine. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing you can say at that point, but like saying nothing is an option. Saying very little is always an option in these situations, but like whatever, dude. Whatever. And that's where that story is at. I don't know where this goes from here. I think that you will always have some amount of fan base that like oh, really? Okay. I don't want to get caught up in the blow by blow, but Kingy in the chat says that Robert Bowling fired back at him. All right. Let's go wading in the fucking sewer for a while longer here. Robert Bowling posted 11:35 Pacific time, so about 20 minutes ago. This is a statement from me personally. It does not reflect any of my companies and has not gone through any legal or PR approvals. If you inappropriately message a minor, I cannot work with you, period. I promised to only act on facts, and I did. Bowling has been out there relatively recently. He had a really long set of tweets about how his wife was being tweeted at another studio and some of the sexism involved there, and just like he I have not seen or spoken to Robert Bowling in well over a decade at this point, I think. But yeah, she was at EA and was having a very rough time there, and her situation was not being addressed by EA. And so he wrote a big, long, detailed thing about what his wife was going through there, and I guess ultimately that's neither here nor there. But at the same time, I don't know. So yeah, I don't know where this situation goes from here, but I think that ultimately, I think cutting ties, now that he's gone out and admitted to doing the thing, and is now trying to seemingly spin it as not a big deal, to say, yeah, I did that thing, but it wasn't illegal. It's not like I was charged criminally. Like, I think if you're ever in a position where you are saying, I wasn't, this is a civil thing. It's not like I was charged criminally. You're fucking like, okay, that's not no one, only the worst sort of people hear that message and go, oh, okay, cool. All right. Okay. Yeah. You know what? Yes. Okay. All right. Well, take your vacation. I can't wait till you get back, and we'll have some fun, champions. Let's fucking, Jesus Christ. It is like alarmingly like what Drake had to say about the Kendrick Lamar things. Except he was like, I'm too famous to touch kids. I would get arrested. Oh, you mean like all those other the question comes up, why did Twitch settle with him and pay out his contract? Well, we can't know that without seeing the contract, ultimately. For all we know, there was no morals clause in the contract. For all we know, there was enough of a dispute around the morals that Twitch felt it better to just like get him the fuck out of there, as opposed to taking it to court and seeing it all the way through and whatever else. So on the Twitch end, it's probably just like, yep, no, we want this guy out of here fucking ASAP. And what can we do? It could very well, and remember, like they were, it's entirely possible that it was a bad contract. For a lot of reasons, because they were not necessarily writing a ton of these types of contracts at the time. who had these types of agreements at Twitch? It was like him and like Ninja or something, right? This was like early days on them trying to secure exclusivity from specific broadcasters. Whether it was, because Mixer was happening, or also there was that brief rumor, and I think this might be even have been caught up in some of this stuff, where there was talk of like, oh, I heard that this guy, and this guy are going off and starting a brand new streaming platform, and he's doing this to get out of his deal, and he's going to go and jump ship and do that. There was some kind of thing around that, and it was like that never obviously never came to pass, but there was definitely like a 2 or 3 day period that everyone was convinced that like Ninja was starting a new streaming site and taking people with him or whatever it was. So yeah, without seeing the contract and knowing what Twitch had at its disposal to deal with these types of situations, whether it's like the morals clause is not well written, or was the moral clause written in such a way that this could be taken as ambiguous because quote unquote nothing illegal happened. Who knows? So they probably just did what they knew that they could do and say like, you're done. Yes, we'll here. We will pay you out. Go get the fuck out of here. Which is sometimes your best option. So, yeah, I don't know. But hey, at least nothing illegal was done. Right? Yeah. Anyway, that's the news. A bit of a roller coaster ride today, I suppose, in the old headline department. And I'm kind of seeing if anything else happened. Did anything else happen while we were doing this? It doesn't look like it. People seem to really want to know who is developing Mario and Luigi, and Nintendo is not being forthright with that information, which is a very Nintendo thing to do. Sometimes you feel like you have to wait for the credits on a game to figure out who the fuck developed a thing. That always says to me that like, oh, the people that people want to have developed this game did not develop it, and so that's why we're not saying or whatever. Anyway, I need a shower after that one. Let's get into some emails. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. You can send in your emails to me, and I will read them. And yeah. Speaking of dirtbags, we talked about esports last week. And a few folks wrote in with a few different esports stories. Aaron from Dallas wrote in about college esports, which I know, yeah, some colleges tried to kind of get in on the act and start their teams and whatever else. And I know there was an attempt to start that league up, and I don't know what the state of that is currently. In listening to your answer about general esports coverage and how the entire field seems like it's more desperation to want to make something happen, I thought I'd write in and tell you about my experience helping set up a college esports program. When we started our program, I thought we were going to have some consultant or expert come in, but that ended up being me because I played in an arcade fighting game tournament and played a little Cyber Athlete Amateur League UT2K4 and Day of Defeat forever ago. Finding myself in that position, I'm doing the best I can. All I've gotten are headaches for not much reward, trying to explain to other operations departments that game file sizes are big, licenses are tied to people, some of these games are owned by Chinese companies, the law is keeping us from playing, we need as few hops to the outside internet as possible, and other basic make game run good needs has been tough, if not impossible. Student interest outside of the program is equivalent to seeing two people be good at Street Fighter and watching them for a second before continuing to walk through the mall. For the kids involved in the program, it's good for them, but I'm not sure any of the benefits of camaraderie are above what they'd be getting over calling themselves a clan and joining a Discord server, and we're one of the winningest organizations at our size. I keep telling myself it's cool they get to do this, but then I see what 19-year-old Call of Duty teams are sending. I keep telling myself it's cool they get to do this, but then I see what 19-year-old Call of Duty teams are sending to each other on Discord when they stay logged in, and I wonder what the hell we're doing here. I'm sure there are positives I'm not aware of, but now I just kind of feel like I'm part of a problem and really hope I'm proven wrong. Streaming production skills seem to be the most worthwhile thing we're offering. Yeah. Yeah, that's something. Stream production skills are not nothing for sure, but that's, yeah, I don't know. That doesn't, it sounds grim. It sounds grim, my friend. Chris wrote in the latest podcast, you discussed a lack of support of esports, and I wholeheartedly agree with your assessment. It was further backed up when I saw an Instagram reel from, of all places, Bleacher Report, an actual sports site that for some reason showed a clip of some kid getting drafted for some team in the NBA 2K League. It looked like it was in a warehouse set to bad electronic music and horribly garish neon visuals because it must look gamer. Yeah. The breakdown of the player was replayed audio through the shittiest speaker known to man. The kid seemed very proud and tugged on his draft cap like he was a real NBA prospect. His family seemed extremely ambivalent or embarrassed. The comments were the comments you'd expect. A quick dive on why esports isn't a thing and probably won't be a thing. Each comment going hard at Bleacher Report for showing not real sports, and snarky, let me send you 2K clips and put me on your reel. Just a weird timing from the algorithm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Bleacher Report, calling Bleacher Report a sports site is a reach, my friend. No, I don't know. Whatever. They do a bunch of wrestling stuff, but like ESPN does a bunch of wrestling stuff now too. So it's not, professional wrestling is not necessarily the indicator. But like that's the thing you would see whenever ESPN was covering Evo or whatever. It was always like people were just so bitter about it. Where they're just like, what are these fucking kids doing? This isn't a real fucking, you know, like you would see some pieces of it when they would broadcast bowling, but not nearly as bad. Bowling is more accepted than esports, you know? Not that bowling doesn't require a skill, but you know, so does playing video games well. Or like when ESPN2 would be showing, you know, they would show Scrabble. The glory days. Go find yourself a full run of the show Cheap Seats, where the Sklar brothers do a Mystery Science Theater on the ESPN tape library. Hell of a show. Maybe the only Mystery Science Theater knockoff that I think is at least as good as the real thing. Real good. Real good. And funny, and a ton of great comedians on it as well. Like the guests that they get for some of their bits are just amazing. Ugh. I'm going to rewatch all of Cheap Seats, aren't I? It's about time. It's about time I did. It's been too long. Yeah, I don't know, man. The esports thing, I've been continuing to think about it a little bit more, but I don't know that I have anything else to add to it. Other than that, just, yeah, I think you have like the other than someone did say like, well, you know, the numbers are really great on these streams, on these broadcasts. Like you go look at the stream numbers for the international, or go look at them for this, and you know, whatever it is. But like, ultimately, if your game is hard to convey to people that don't play the game, then your audience is limited to people that are already playing the game, and that's not interesting. That doesn't need to be broadcast anywhere else because all of those people are already tuned in and they'll watch it through the game client if they can. That'd be a better experience for most of them if they could just spectate it like a real match. Finding ways to illustrate the competition in a meaningful way to bystanders that don't know the games themselves is a very upward. That's why I said that fighting games were easier than most. Not to say that every nuance of a fighting game is easy to understand, but they put big life bars on the screen, and when one guy punches the other, you go, oh. You at least can understand it on some, I was going to say carnal level, but that's not what that means. But yeah, I don't know. Like the chase for like esports eyeballs was always this really desperate seeming thing. But we talked about that in the emails last week. Someone on YouTube said, you should cut this out because it is cogent or whatever. And so you can go back and watch that if you want. Let's see. Ryan from Atlanta writes in and says, watching the latest episode of ranking 8-bit Nintendo games and Metal Storm got me thinking, what's the hardest mechanic in those games to deal with in the modern day? Despite playing a bunch of these games as a kid and loving them, I always find one-hit deaths to be incredibly frustrating as an adult. Do you have any others that were totally accepted and common at the time, but drag a game down in the modern context? I think some of the lengthy pause menu subscreen stuff that you have to do that nowadays is, like toggled very easily by the additional buttons that you have. I think, bad checkpoints and save spots, lives and continues and credits in general have fallen out of favor. Score has fallen out of favor, for sure, along the way. One-hit deaths was something that I didn't really like then. That's that was what kind of got me out of shooters in the first place, was so many one-hit deaths. But yeah, some of that stuff is a bit hard to go back to. One-hit deaths isn't necessarily bad on its own. It's one-hit deaths combined with returning to a bad checkpoint or limited number of continues or whatever else. Like that type of friction is very unwelcome these days. Because I don't think that that's a great way to get difficulty into a game. And today I think a lot of, developers find better and more natural and more interesting ways to put difficulty into their games. Other than this stuff that felt like these kind of vestigial holdovers from the arcade era where you're trying to suck quarters out of someone's pocket. And so you need to make it this type of hard, and they can only play for this many minutes before they have to put another quarter in, or, whatever it is. Like that sort of stuff is that's the bad shit, I think. Yeah. Ryan from Canada says, why do third-party controllers still kind of suck? I'm getting into emulation, in large part because of you, and have been frustrated at how bad things are. Even the two 8BitDo Ultimates that I tried had wonky D-pads or sticky shoulder buttons. I've tried 7 controllers from 8BitDo, Ghoulie Kit, Game Sir, and Backbone, and they all had issues that seem to largely have been solved by Sony and Microsoft. Has this been your experience? Why isn't this a solved problem? Is it simply a scale issue? Yeah, I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of bad shit out there. You're you're right. I think that there are a lot of controllers out there that have, there's something up with them. Like, I think a PlayStation controller these days is great. They're a little heavy, I'll say, for a especially the DualSense Edge. It's a little heavier than I wish they were, but they feel solid in the hand, and that's nice. But like the current Xbox controller, I think feels good. I think they have a good D-pad. I think they have good buttons. I used to swear by the Xbox Elite controllers. But the build quality of the current generation of just standard Xbox controllers, they took in most of the things I liked about the most of the D-pad stuff that I liked about the Elite. And so I don't really need to use an Elite. I mean, I'm using a DualSense Edge these days anyway, but because I paid for it and I'm going to get my money out of it one way or another, God damn it. But I think the current Xbox controller is great. I think that some of those 8-bit Do controllers feel like garbage. And some of them just have like, it's always a situation where, oh, this is a really good controller, except for this. Like this Saturn controller I've been talking about. This is, I think it was Retrobit made this. It feels a lot like a Saturn controller. The buttons feel like you would want a Saturn controller to feel. The D-pad feels like a Saturn controller you want to feel. The analog sticks are not amazing. Clicking them in, the L3, R3 is not a great experience. But also the L1, R1, the triggers up here on this thing feel like fucking crap. Both of them feel like crap. And they don't feel quite like a Saturn controller either. They're fine, but they're not great. This, I got this with this Ghoulie Kit King Kong Pro 2 or King Kong 2 Pro. They're up to the 3 now. The King Kong 3 exists. The KK3 Max. And I wanted to get this because I wanted to mess around with Hall effect sticks. And I think the sticks on it feel fucking awesome. The D-pad feels okay. The triggers and shoulder buttons and stuff feel totally all right. But the face buttons are a little too flat. And when you reach the edge, it's kind of a hard, like, roll off the edge as opposed to more of a bulbous feel. And so I think that these buttons don't feel good. Also, all the switch plus and minus and everything else they did for the select and start and everything else kind of sucks too. But I like this controller for aiming. I actually, the Hall effect sticks and the kind of, you know, having like really low dead zones, I think that is really great for that. And I started playing a bunch of Call of Duty with it and found that I was just fucking people up. And I was getting a lot more headshots than I used to. And then I got a DualSense Edge, and I think that that's also a really great controller, and have been doing quite well with that as well. And I've been sticking with that, partially because it was way too much money. At, you know, $200 or whatever, I'm going to use this DualSense Edge until it fucking falls apart. But that's the King Kong, that's the King Kong Pro 2, but they have what is now the King Kong 3 Max, I think is the newest version of it. And it's got trigger stops in it and all of this, and it's got back triggers and some of the other cool shit you would want out of a fancy controller. I would strongly consider one of those. Because I think the Hall effect sticks, I think that shit might be real. I can't tell you for sure, but like, I think the Hall effect stick thing, like low drift, really low dead zone, having really good thumb feel, that stuff might be legit. That stuff might be for realsies. And so you might want to look into something like that. But I think that what they're charging for the current version of the controller is like $80 or something. It's like kind of in line with official controllers. You can also record really long macros on them if you want to. I don't know what you would want to do. You could probably program fucking Tekken combos into it, you dirtbag. I should program Tekken combos into it. I should program Tekken combos into it. Anyway. Yes, Helldivers stratagems, also another potential option there, I suppose. I don't know how many things you can store in it at a time, but anyway. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of third-party controllers are garbage, and a lot of the ones that are trying to emulate or remake existing controllers, they always get something wrong. 8-Bit Do made the one that's the controllers that look like SNES controllers, except they have analog sticks and full sets of triggers. And that thing's okay. But the shoulder buttons, because of the SNES controller is so narrow up top, it feels very tightly compacted. I don't have small hands. And so the trying to work the shoulder buttons on that controller is sometimes not as good as you want, but it's okay. I don't know, man. But yeah, the third party stuff is I think that's why I started fucking buying a bunch of controllers there for a while. Like I started getting weird, and I was just like, I'm fucking bored, man. I'm gonna buy another controller, and partially because I couldn't find any good, reliable reporting or you know, it's hard to find a lot of people talking about this stuff. And I think you know, the people that do report on it talk about it in really weird ways sometimes. I was primarily looking for something for use on the Mister for a while, and Mr. Add-ons of MrAddons.com. I don't know if I think he still maintains it, but had this really intense, long list of latency calculations for each controller as it related to being plugged into a Mister. And so I was buying like hoary 6-button sticks with the 6-button controllers with the lowest latency on his list and stuff, and going like, no, yeah, this feels good. And it sent me down a road for 6 months or so there, where I started just kind of like buying controllers. I bought that Nitro. Is it the Nitro deck? I still have that thing around here somewhere. That you plug a switch into, and it's meant to be a shell with. But like that thing feels like garbage. I think they just put out a new device. I don't know if it's any better or not, but the Nitro deck, the cracked or whatever that is, whatever the name of that company is, that thing seemed like a real fucking ripoff. But yeah, I don't know. Controllers are weird. I mean, I always chalk it up to. I went and when they brought us up to announce the Xbox One, when they were first showing us the Xbox One on the fated trip where they didn't have their story straight and every reporter got a different answer about used games and always online, like the fated Xbox One unveiling, they let us go around the Microsoft campus and see a ton of stuff. And one of the places they took us was the controller lab. And they had a bunch of prototypes and like all of the, you know, they had all of these machines they would use to test the controller to make sure that it could, you know, they would push the buttons 10,000 times and, you know, make sure that they could stand up to that challenge and that all of the ways that they could very quickly cut a prototype controller and try to mess with it for a while as they were going through the process of trying to make them. You realize just how much money and effort goes into making a first-party controller, and I can damn well guarantee you that none of these third-party companies are spending that much money in R&D to make sure that they are figuring out this is the exact right spacing for this ergonomically, this needs to be here, this blah, blah, blah. Like, the things that Microsoft was doing for those controllers was mind-blowing. And I doubt that 8-bit dough is going through that process. Not to say they don't have any process, but I'm guessing that that's part of it. And I would assume that Sony and Nintendo have similar setups, you know. The other thing I got to do, and I have been thinking about it ever since, because like someone will mention it in some other context, or I'll see someone else in one of these rooms. Microsoft had a room that was, I forget what they call it. They had a hyperbaric chamber where I went in there and time stood still, and I was able to train and get really strong. And then when I came out, but it was an anechoic chamber, the totally silent room where they have put foam and everything on the walls just so that no sound, even when you're talking, you can barely hear yourself speak. And you're walking on like a grate, on like a wire mesh that is suspended above the ground because there's more of that foam and wall stuff below you and above you. And they closed me in there for a little bit. And, you know, you can really hear your tinnitus. Yes, really good way to hear your tinnitus. And you can hear your own heartbeat, and you can hear, and people apparently go nuts in there. People apparently lose their mind when they're in there for too long. And the only thing I wanted to do was to be in that room again for longer. I want to be in that room. I want to be in one of those rooms, and I want to see what happens. I want to go crazy in one of those rooms. I want to fucking lose my mind in a room. Can I let me lose my mind in a room? It was a room that they primarily were using for testing because they were testing all of this voice recognition stuff. And they needed an incredibly quiet place to say words to the Kinect camera, I guess, is why they had that room set up, and what they were actually doing with it was something about trying to calibrate Kinect voices and whatever else. Stuff that I bet is completely obsolete now that, you know, the way machines listen to us has changed quite a bit since then. I want to be in the room. Put me back in the room. It was really funny when the Kinect came out and had a lot of trouble recognizing people's voices, because you're like, well, yeah, I mean, we're not in an incredibly silent room. I mean, I dropped something on the floor while you were trying to turn the Xbox on, so of course it didn't work. I think about that room a lot. And I saw a video on TikTok of someone was in another room like that somewhere else. And I knew that there was one in the Bay Area, and I knew basically where it was, but I didn't know exactly where. And then I would be driving on the freeway, and I knew it was up in those hills somewhere. It was like part of Lucas. It was part of like the Skywalker Ranch stuff, I think. That they had one somewhere in their in their facility, and I was like, man, I know enough people that work here. Maybe I could get one of them to let me in the room and see if I can go crazy. Anyway, I don't know why and shit. Like, I don't know why I'm like, I want to fucking, but I want to see, like, how do you lose your mind? What happens? I mean, I'm sure you'd be fine afterwards. You'd recover. It's not like you're doing permanent damage to your fucking psyche or whatever, but like, I just want to know. What kind of weird would I get? Because I sit here and I think about it and I go like, it'd be fine, dude. Whatever. What, I'm going to hear my heartbeat and I'm going to hear all this weird stuff. And like, whatever. I could sit here and think shit for hours. I could just sit here and fucking think about whatever. I'll think about fucking Miles Kilo in Syndicate and how badass he is, and I'll never go crazy. Anyway. I don't know. Nathaniel in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, writes in, says, your ranking of the NES version of Lemmings made me want to play it again, so I checked the normal places. Sorry. Steam, Epic, GOG, even the Rockstar launcher due to their history with the franchise, and no, it isn't available anywhere. There's a free-to-play Lemmings game on mobile, though, chock full of microtransactions and the old energy meter to prevent you from having too much fun all at once. I mean, I could try to dig my Genesis copy out and hook up a Genesis and play it, but shouldn't all-time classics like that just be available for sale somewhere? Are they deliberately trying to point people to the mobile version so they could theoretically make infinite money from the property instead of just $5 or $10 for a port of the original? Instead of making that $10, they stand to make zero now, especially if I hunt down a copy of the purportedly great PSP version. Why does only Nintendo seem to understand the ability they have to sell the same games to people over and over again due to the power of nostalgia? I had this problem with EA a few years ago when I decided I wanted to play the original Sims, but could only find later sequels available anywhere. Boiled down, why do publishers risk losing revenue to piracy or secondhand sales when they could easily provide a library of old games for legal purchase? Well, because the platforms that Lemmings runs on might not exist anymore, and so they would have to do work to support it. it would cost them money to do that, and they have to. Then it becomes a business conversation about, well, if we put out Lemmings on the PC and updated it to run, would that make its money back? And GOG has been willing to do some of that for, they'll package things with DOSBox, and my understanding is that GOG will do some of that work for the publisher. But I think the actual answer is that Sony owns Lemmings through the purchase of Psygnosis. All of that stuff has long since been shut down. Psygnosis doesn't exist anymore. Even, Liverpool, some of the other kind of studios you thought of as maybe like carrying the torch for the old Psygnosis brand. A lot of those studios are gone now too. And so I just don't think there's anyone inside the company that is championing Lemmings enough to warrant making a new one. And that's it. I think I don't think it's like super complicated. I think it's for a lot of the same reasons why, Desert Strike is maybe hard to find, because it's a Genesis game. You can't just sell Genesis games. I guess you can, but like, is it worth the work? Because to sell a Genesis game, you would have to go do a deal with some open source emulator that is open to commercial use and be able to package it with the Desert Strike ROM, and then you would need to put it on Steam and sell it. And is anyone going to care? Is that the best way to sell that game, especially in a world where that game has been available for download for years and years and years and years and years? And that's that. What's the licensing like? Who owns the rights to it? Is it all purely owned by the publisher? Is there music involved? Is there something where rights have reverted to the designer, and so maybe it's a complicated arrangement? Any speed bump, anything that slows this process down derails it completely. I remember hearing the stories about, because they wanted to release the source code for Ultima 4, right? Or re-release it. I forget what but back at Mythic, they when they were making that mobile Ultima game, Ultima Forever, they wanted to re-release some games either on GOG. And that's what I think they weren't necessarily, they weren't necessarily releasing source code. They wanted to sell the games again on GOG. And I got to hear bits and pieces of what the process was like internally to try to fucking get that thing through. And it's a bunch of lawyers who negotiate. This is, again, not to fall back on my own experience, but like at some point when you are a smaller division or you're trying to do something that's not going to make a lot of money, you got a small thing you want to do that would be fucking awesome to some number of people. And would it bring some money in? Sure. But is it going to bring in enough money to justify that lawyer's time? Maybe not. And in our situation being owned by CBS, the things I was trying to get to a lawyer were things that, like, literally the thing I was told was like, well, this is also the same lawyer that negotiates the rights for the Masters golf tournament to air on CBS. And so this is beneath, they don't have time for this little, this isn't going to make anything. It's like, okay, so nothing can happen then. Basically what you're telling me is that nothing's going to happen because you've set up this situation where the only option I have is to go to the guy who negotiates the shit for the Masters. And because, I'm trying to do this smaller other fucking thing over here, fuck me forever. Or maybe we can get it in the spare, but it's not going to happen fast. And they're going to get halfway through it and then go like, hey, what was that? Are you still doing that? Like, I was trying to, but I guess not. And so, yeah. So now imagine a company like any company. I'm singling out EA because that's, specifically, I have stories about, but any one of these companies that owns any one of these old IPs, Sony with Lemmings, to take your example, the process you'd have to go through to vet that, to make sure you own it, the work you would have to do to make sure that it runs cleanly on modern systems or whatever type of release you're trying to do is it even going to make its money back? You know, the amount of time spent making that project happen, will it sell enough to make back the money of the 5 or 10 people or that had to unfuck the business arrangement to make it happen, to even get it onto GOG or something? Like that's holding things back just as much as any technical problem, you know. That was stuff that, you know, the stuff that kind of killed Game Room, right? When Game Room had there were a lot of games that were ready to go in Game Room, I'm told, from like SNK and other, you know, publishers that were not a part of the project at that point. But because they had some sales data and because they, you know, were like, here's how much money you stand to make on this, and our prices are fixed, and we will sell these games for $5 and whatever else. At some point, they're like, yeah, I don't get out of bed for $5 video games. It's not worth my time. It's not worth my time to have this meeting to figure out if we can do this, because the amount of money you're talking about making isn't worth it for us to even think about it. And so a lot of games that could go back on sale one way or another get shut down by that. And so, yeah, now you have Hamster that's doing these things that for $7 a piece, which always seems a little pricey to me. And every single one is standalone and non-exclusive and whatever else. And so they'll do the SNK 40th anniversary thing, and Hamster will do these releases, and, you know, and, you know, maybe that adds up. But, yeah, I don't know. That was always the problem with Game Room, I guess, was that, you know, even Konami got to a point, I guess, with Sunset Riders where they're just like, nah. Like, but we already sent the game to everyone's Xbox in the last content update. And pull the plug on it. We're not doing that anymore. I don't know what the actual exact story was there, but it all kind of happened around the same time. I think, you know, Microsoft stepping away from the project because they realized that, like, they weren't going to be able to get the business end of it done. It's frustrating, you know? Yeah, I mean, it's easy to sit here and go like, man, why don't all these games go on sale forever? And you know, why can't we do this? But, like, there are a lot of different reasons why, each more frustrating than the last. And for everyone that's like a technical, like, oh, it'd be really hard for us to port this PS3 game, you know, like, oh, how do we get Metal Gear Solid 4 off the fucking PS3? And which I think they'll do eventually here. Give them enough time. You end up with all these other things that are like rights issues or whatever else, that are just like bigger and different, weirder problems. So I think that's ultimately what you run into. And it sucks because you feel helpless. You feel like there's nothing I can do as a consumer to register my interest any harder than I am. But there aren't, you know, but like you kind of have to face the idea that, like, there aren't enough of me that are willing to pay enough money to make this worthwhile. And so, you know, like the big compilations still work, but like if you try to break those games out separately, and so like you have like Antstream doing their streaming services and you know, streaming some of these classic games to you in a variety of forms, and that's interesting and all that. But like, if you just want to own the games, sometimes that's rough. You know, I think it's part of why the Digital Eclipse stuff has been so refreshing, right? But like, there, you know, the Digital Eclipse Goldmaster series and Atari 50 and some of that other stuff, I think, is really amazing. And it's because they're approaching it in a way that helps. They're approaching these projects in ways that allow them to credibly sell it for $40 or $50 or whatever else, as opposed to like the $20 quick compilation of like, here's 20 Intellivision games or whatever else. By making these things seem like a big deal and doing the history work and creating these full-on packages, they're creating a project that you can then say, well, we can sell this for a little bit more than we would be able to otherwise, because people will see the value. That it's not just a collection of emulation shit. It's like we're doing the gallery stuff right. We're doing this interview stuff right. And it's an ingenious way to attack this problem. But there's, but it's a prestige product, right? And a lot of games don't deserve that. Or a lot, you'll have companies that put out 2 games in the 80s and they vanished, and you're like, well, what about that stuff's never going to happen, come back. Like, when am I going to be able, when am I going to be able to play the exhaustive 3-hour documentary about Bounty Bob Strikes Back and Miner 2049er? And, where's that? God damn it. Or like some of these smaller studios that might not have the catalog to carry an Atari 50. I mean, the thing's got over 100 games in it, right? And then you've got people that are just disgusting. That are like, yes, like Limited Run is doing their Gex collection and their Bubsy collection, and you're just like, this is filth. But I really want to see how that filth comes together. The Gex and the Bubsy things, I don't. They're talking like that the Bubsy thing is going to have like documentary style material and whatever else. But like, there's a right way and a wrong way to do a Bubsy thing. And I think it's a really hard line to walk. You almost need to be unflinchingly serious about it. And not be like, ha ha ha, look at this joke. We're putting out the Bubsy games. Like, there needs to be, you never fucking wink, man. You just treat it like nothing matters more than these Bubsy games, and we're going to take it deathly seriously. And yes, you include the Bubsy visits, the James Turrell retrospect. Yes, you include the only good Bubsy game as a part of that. And try to make it all work. I don't know. Some of this stuff is weird. Like, I think it's cool that there are companies now out there that can do this sort of work, right? But yes, plumbers don't wear ties. No one needed that. No one, it's cool. Is it cool? Like, when Night Trap got re-released, like, at least the video quality was a little bit better, and that's kind of neat in a sick way, but how many bad games can you re-release under the guise of, isn't it funny we're releasing this bad game? You know what I mean? Like, I think that stuff is theoretically interesting. But I have I have zero interest in plumbers don't wear ties. I did then, I do now. Like, that's not, to me, that's just sort of a weird one, I guess. But Night Trap, you could make a case for it, but it doesn't deserve it. And so I don't know. I don't know where this stuff goes. But I appreciate that there are at least different approaches out there, as much as I think that the way Digital Eclipse is doing it is like the canonically correct way to do it. Most games and franchises don't deserve that treatment. And so I'm curious to see what this Gex thing ends up being. I don't think you should re-release Gex. I don't think Gex was ever good. I think that people's interest in Gex is more of like straight up irony and has very little to do with the quality of Gex. You have some people that maybe played Gex as a kid and they think they like Gex. They're not good games. They were not good games. Secret Agent Gex, you were not like, oh, fucking finally. And like, I think re-releasing video games because it somehow became a meme or whatever. They're like, people sure have been clowning on Gex for a very long time. I guess we should put that back out. Maybe we could get people to buy it because that'd be funny. Would they buy it because it's funny? I think we will find out that no, it is not. I can't imagine that's going to do as well as they want it to. I don't know. Like, maybe they're smarter than that and they realize like, like whatever, man. And so maybe they're budgeting appropriately and it'll be fine. But like, nothing about a re-release of Gex is actually good or funny. I would much rather watch a Dana Gould interview about Gex, but like I'm surprised that they got him involved, because I know for a while there, anytime anyone mentioned Gex to Dana Gould, it was met with eye rolls and just ugh. They need to get Steve Grohl, who was at the studio back in the day. I believe he's still involved in the PlayStation operation. That dude, I listen to that man talk about anything for any length of time. You just give me 7 hours. Steve Grohl just growling. Anyway, but I believe he's involved in. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, the ironic re-release of the bad old game, I cannot abide. Like, it just doesn't. I don't know, man. It just seems like a very naked kind of thing, and Bubsy. I should see if they want my Bubsy prototype. It's for, my Genesis 2, my Bubsy 2 prototype for Genesis. See if they want a copy of that to throw in there. I've got it. I dumped it at some point. I should probably redump it, but I should see if they want some pictures of it or something. Maybe I'll reach out. But yeah, I don't know, man. Wedge writes in with another idea for Call of Duty Black Ops 6 on Game Pass. After listening to the email and your thoughts on Game Pass for older Black Ops, I think the solution is simple. Release the single-player campaigns only. That allows them to drop them in order to lead up to the release, which will get some hype leading into the new release. So the question was like, could people play the older Black Ops games to kind of catch up on the story of the Black Ops franchise? So like Black Ops 1 and 2 would probably be the relevant games there. And we were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if they re-released these? And I think my take was like, hey, they don't want to fuck with the release of the new game by re-releasing old games and getting people who might just be satisfied playing those to then not play the new one and not buy skins and whatever else. So sure, yeah, what if you just released the single player campaigns and let people play through those? Yes, the problem there is that takes work. And you would want to do it for every platform. So then, so it's not just a Game Pass thing. It's like suddenly you're like, okay, are we putting these back out on PlayStation? Like, are you making a new product for PlayStation and for PC that is just the Black Ops 1 and 2 campaign? And that's a lot of work just to rip out the multiplayer and zombies and everything else just to fucking do that. And so I don't think they would do that. Do it just for Game Pass, then you might as well just release the whole things. I mean, they can always release the whole things and turn the servers off if they really just wanted to do that. But like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think they would do that. I don't think that would really meet the needs. Kenny from Los Angeles just writes in and says, Nightmare Creatures, that's it. That's the email. It was never a good game. Nightmare Creatures was never, nor its sequel. No thank you is my response to that. You say Nightmare Creatures, I say no thank you. Let's see, maybe we can take one more here. Graham from Maryland writes in and says, do you believe MC Search's story of MC Hammer putting a $50,000 hit out on him and the rest of Third Base? Yes. So the story here, if you're not familiar, is, Third Base, when Third Base was coming out and they had their singles, they talked shit about MC Hammer. A lot of people were. They're like, oh, that's pop music. We're making real hip hop over here. Like Vanilla Ice got a lot more of that than Hammer ever did. But he was kind of caught up in a lot of the same conversation. And so Hammer became he was insanely popular. You Can't Touch This became a massive, massive, massive song. and good on Hammer. But I guess the thing that you hear people talk about now that I didn't know then is that Hammer had a lot of guys around him that were like not like Hammer was not a fucking easygoing dude about that shit. And so you have people like Too Short has a lot of stories and other people that were around California at the time, but Too Short, also coming up out of Oakland, was right there at the same time Hammer was kind of coming up. And that Hammer was not taking any shit. And so when people like fucking Third Base were out there, yeah, Redman had a long thing too, where he witnessed some aspects of this shit. But like, my understanding is that it was a situation, you can hear people tell these stories now, but like, it was like Third Base has a tour stop in fucking Oakland. And they're like, okay, we did the show and then we're on our way out, and all of a sudden there's all these fucking guys backstage. We have to fucking figure shit out with Hammer and have to, like have it out. Or, like there was no violence at the time or whatever, but like they got away and got out of town, whatever it was. You'd have to go find those interviews. They're out there, but like I've heard a few different ones at the time. Like but like the short version of it is that, yeah, I mean, fucking Hammer had a lot of money and he was not taking any shit from people when it came to this specific topic. So when people were out there fucking talking that they didn't fucking like Hammer was like, well, fuck, all right, that's it. Go get them. It wasn't necessarily putting hits out on people. It was like, okay, when they come to Oakland, Hammer's guys might be fucking waiting for him at the airport. You never know. Like, it wasn't necessarily Hammer saying, go kill these people. But it was like, okay, well, yeah, they're messing with our guy. We're gonna take care of this. But there's different versions of the story depending on who you're telling it. Yeah. Redman, there was a good Redman interview about some of that stuff, but like Too Short, I think had a really good one as well. And then, yes, of course, you can find MC Search talking about it as well. The MC Search version sounds a little bit embellished to me compared to some of the other versions, but I don't know. And so it's funny now to think about it, because you think about Hammer's career arc, and there was that like Pumps in a Bump era where he was like hanging out with fucking Suge Knight and all this shit. And you're like, what, is Hammer signed to Death Row? What the fuck is going on? Why the fuck is Hammer here? And then you hear all these stories about like, oh, that's what, oh, Hammer doesn't play around. That's why Hammer is here. Because he might be the hardest motherfucker in this photo. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like, again, a lot of this stuff is, I'm sure, been embellished at least a little bit over the years, but it's fascinating because you did not see that side of Hammer ever. So, you had this impression of Hammer just like, I don't know. It's like he's out there, he's fucking doing his dance and fucking he's in the Taco Bell commercial and, yo Hammer, which way to the beach? In all his fucking ads and shit and whatever else, man. But like, yeah, yeah, it's interesting to hear that stuff. I think Snoop Dogg has a version of that story as well. I think basically what I'm saying is I think someone also asked Snoop about it at some point. There's someone else. It's not just Third Base. There was someone else that that was talking shit about Hammer and had to be fucking dealt with. And they squashed it and it was kind of whatever, but it was like a moment of just like, oh God, I can't come back to Oakland anytime soon or this is going to go bad. But yeah, there's someone, it's not just Third Base. It's not just MC Search and Pete Nice, the Prime Minister. It's not just DJ Daddy Rich. But a lot of people were talking shit about Hammer back then. Gary in Australia a silly question. A recent social media post from PlayStation Australia claimed that The Last of Us, released 11 years ago, changed everything. Did it really change everything? No. 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 I can see why you would say that if you were the publisher of that game and marketing it and whatever else and doing your remasters and your TV show and everything else. But did The Last of Us change video games? I don't really think so. I think, well, you'd have to think about the order of operations here in terms of like, when did Last of Us 1 come out? Well, I guess 11 years ago. Combined with the God of Wars and others, like maybe it set the tone for some of PlayStation's output going forward. But I don't know, like that. Certainly that game has systems in it, and the way that they tried to do audio and some of those things. I remember watching the demos of Last of Us 1 and some of the things that they were trying to do with, you know, stealth and how audio travels and bounces around a room and whatever else. Like, I think there's stuff like that that's very interesting, but I don't think that like that, because it's not like you're seeing a zillion games out there like it. Like, it wasn't like widely influential. So I'm trying to think about it in terms of like those individual systems, like some of the things it did with audio, some of the things like were there things there that people saw and then that became the norm in games? Like, did it change games that way, in a way that you might not expect compared to like the changing the game or, you know, whatever. But did it change everything? No, I don't think so. I think, you know, like Last of Us released 11 years ago and changed everything. Has anything changed in games in the last 11 years? Is maybe the bigger question. 2013. What has changed in video games, I guess, is the question there. Live service games, the rise of battle royales, like the things that like dramatically changed video games happened not too long after that in the grand scheme of things, but it was not moving further in the direction of more games like The Last of Us. If anything, it was the extreme opposite of that. And, you know, the PUBGs of the world and whatever else. But no, I don't think that, you know, I think that the things that changed video games in that era or around that era ended up being increased availability of the internet, more games relying on internet connections to function, the rise of live service games in the wake of that, the ongoing rise of microtransactions, the pervasiveness of microtransactions throughout a number of different types of games, like the types of games you could put microtransactions in expanded, right? You saw them tested everywhere they could. And, you know, they pulled back in the places where they knew it wasn't going to make them money, but like, you know, also in some cases that led to them not making those types of games anymore. So yeah, I don't know. When I think about the last decade of video games, or, you know, like it really is kind of the increase of multiplayer, the increase of reliance on live service style seasonal updates, smaller updates. You know, there's nothing wrong with updating a game at all. It's great. You know, like we used to have to go to a store and buy a box and come home and go, now Warcraft 2 has even more units in it. Isn't that fucking bananas? And so the streamlining of that style of content, I think, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, you know, at the end of the day, it also let a lot of things change that maybe aren't consumer friendly. Maybe aren't consumer friendly, I guess. But like the Yeah, KDR11K says, isn't The Last of Us just the culmination of Uncharted's effect on gaming? Yeah, that's probably a better way of putting it. Like, The Last of Us is a studio at the top of its game technically, and they've been at the top of their game for a lot of years up to this point, pivoting in a direction and making something that hits harder and is not like a quippy, jokey Indiana Jones thing, but is a much more like, holy shit, this is a lot of fucked up shit. Like, Jesus Christ, that guy just fucking beat, like it's harder hitting and more emotional partially because of that. But, in a lot of ways, it's a studio who learned a lot, who trailblazed a lot of techniques for that type of big set piece video game, and going and making another franchise in that space, and finding a great deal of success with it. That is still resonating to this day, because now they've got a TV show and all this other stuff. But like, yeah, I think it's in a lot of ways it's the culmination of Naughty Dog becoming finding new ways to stay at the top of their game. Ultimately, whether that's from a technical standpoint or it's. I'm not saying you have to like their storytelling or whatever. What they've done for storytelling in games seems to resonate with a lot of people. That style. And yeah, I don't know. I think that stuff works very well for them. And I think that the things they've done from like set piece perspectives, especially in some of the Uncharted games, but I think that's the stuff that Naughty Dog has brought to games that other games have maybe wanted to do, but also a lot of games can't do anymore because that shit's fucking expensive. Like, there aren't a lot of studios that have the budgets and leeway to really do those sorts of sequences anymore. And maybe they won't in the future. I would be curious to see, what's Naughty Dog do with a tighter budget? Is it just a reduction in scope? It's like the moments are still as big, but the game overall has less content in it, or whatever else. I would be curious to see what those types of constraints would do to one of their games. How they would adapt. You know what I mean? That would be very curious to see. But no, I don't think The Last of Us changed games. It changed gaming. And I'm not necessarily just saying that because I don't much care for the game. It's, like the game, I think, earned its place just fine. And I think that studio has done an amazing job technically. I just don't much care for their characters and their dialogue and their storytelling and all of that end of it. But what they're doing from a technical standpoint, it fucking is pretty mind-blowing, or was at the time. At some point, making those E3 demos killed them enough that Sony just stopped going to E3. This is a question we talked about last week that I didn't actually get to. Brian writes in, longtime listener, just wanted to get your thoughts on Cameron and the whole Dipset movement in the early 2000s. Wondering if you're aware of Max B, aka Wavy Crockett, and his upcoming release from prison. Also, in years of listening to your gaming discussions, I was curious as to what your thoughts are on sidearms for the TurboGrafx 16. Sidearms is okay. I don't know. I'm not like a massive sidearms fan. I'll tell you, I like sidearms more than I like the Dipset. I never really, I don't think, I just never. That's that East Coast shit that you just listen to and go like, what the fuck is this? Like C-tier fucking East Coast rappers. Like, just like, who all is in Dipset? Is it Freaky Zeke? Who's... Joel Santana, I think has done some fine work, but maybe more in the post era. I guess. Well, maybe not. Jim Jones, like that one Jim Jones song is funny, and I like that it's in that game. But Cameron never really did anything for me. It was just like, oh, what the fuck is this? It's fucking there's just like a glut of East Coast fucking clowns that were coming out around this time that I was always just like, I don't even know. These guys are so interchangeable. They're so like below the East Coast artists that seem to matter. And it's like, whatever. Yes, Cameron, Freaky Zeke, Jim Jones, and Joel Santana. Oh, and J.R. Ryder was okay. Oh, and Hell Rel. Yes, who can forget Hell Rel? Yeah, no. Just never really like Oh Boy and Hey Ma are like they're decent. They're fine. For like again, for like that specific era when everything was just like I don't know, it just felt like all this mixtape shit and whatever else. Like it never Jim Jones just always seemed like funny to me. Like I could never take that dude seriously. There's just something about the way that guy came off all the time. I was like, whatever, man. Yeah, ballin'. Yeah, sure. All right, dude. Where is Freaky Zeke now? He was sentenced to 35 to 42 months in prison on February 5th, 2004 for running an ecstasy ring. He served 33 months in Durham, North Carolina before being released in November of 2006. And then he put out The Best of Ezekiel, his first studio album, in 2007. And then after that, some mixtapes. Okay, Freaky Zeke. Yeah, no, that's forgettable is what I would call most of that stuff, I guess. Just for all the other stuff that was happening at the time. Yes, I am aware of Max B, but like I think I only really became aware of Max B as a result of people wanting to free Max B. And then, you know, you kind of went back and like, oh yeah, okay, Max B, all right, sure, I get it. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't realize that Max B was getting out of prison soon. That they will actually free Max B here pretty soon. When is he coming home? I'm trying to find conviction and appeal. Okay, so he's supposed to be out in 2025. Was what Wikipedia says. His convictions were vacated in mid-2016. In September 2016, he pled guilty to aggravated manslaughter and was sentenced to 20 years, putting his release date at 2025. Yeah. Yeah, I remember when, you know, it was like Kanye had some mention of being wavy on something and people got all mad about it. I get a lot of people were talking about things being wavy without necessarily being down with Max B, and people were like, you're stealing it from Max B. We've got to free Max B. I'm like, yes. But then Max B was on that Kanye, you know, on a phone call from prison or whatever else. I don't know. Okay, so I just, you know, like Max B, you just kind of hear about here and there, but I never really kind of like realized, like, okay, so he's kind of down with Dame Grease and French Montana. That makes sense. That makes sense why I would not have heard a bunch of Max B at the time when it was relevant. Anyway, I do like him going by the Silver Surfer. I think that's funny. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of East Coast hip hop from that era, I guess, from kind of around the Dipset era that I have next to no for whatever, like, who cares, right? But like, you know, like I just have like fucking zero respect for that shit. But it's just like I like all this fucking cornball kind of like post Puffy and Mace fucking, you know, Cameron with his fucking furs on and shit, and it's just like, fuck all this. What is this fucking, is this what it is now? Come on. Why would I be listening to this? when I could be listening to Ja Rule. Right? Right? Anyway. It's murder. Ja Rule. He's like the perfect combination of like Jay-Z's smoothness and DMX's roughness, you know? He's the ultimate bionic super rapper. There was a period of time there where people thought that was gonna like happen, that was gonna be a thing. That people were like, no, just Ja Rule. And then 50 Cent woke up one morning and said, oh, absolutely not. Hang on. I got some shit I gotta do. And took care of it. And for that, we still owe 50 Cent a debt for what he did for us. As much as I like Vita, who was part of the Murder Inc. But anyway, she was on that song Rockstar. Neptunes. NERD, if you will. You want to talk about a record? Whew. Whoa, that record. Whoa. Holy shit. Anyway. I'm going to get going. Someone asked if I liked Outkast. Yes, I like Outkast. And yeah, there's a new Clips album coming out, which, like, that's exciting. I don't know what they'll rap about. Will half the songs be about cocaine? And I think I said last time, like, and half will be about the Lord? That I don't understand how that happens, but I will absolutely listen to what a reformed Clips puts out. Absolutely. How could you not, with their track record together and with Pusha T's solo stuff, keeping the fire lit, if you will? How could you not be excited about a new Clips record? Holy shit. They should do more mixtapes. We got it for cheap, volume fucking 9 or whatever. Where the fuck are those guys? Where's everybody else? Anyway, I gotta go. Have yourselves a good rest of your Tuesday. Be back Wednesday with some video gaming of some sort. We'll stare at the banana for 3 hours. No banana. And then, of course, on Friday, we will rank some 8-bit Nintendo games. Come on through. 10 a.m. start time for both of those. Somewhere around there. And check out the Patreon. Patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. You can get ad-free version of this show and hot bonus action. All right. I'm going to get going. Everybody have a good rest of your day. And I will see you soon. Please continue to not admit any wrongdoing until we speak again.